Hey guys, how are you all? Welcome to Let's Start Story on What If Naruto Build Dominant Harem with Tayuya. So do 4 blue hearts comment, be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video, and please share with your friends and watch till end. Also check out Patreon for I have upload Naruto X Rias and Akino uncensored spicy version, link in description. Naruto. I'm sure you know why I called you here today. The Hokage offered, her face forming a serious expression that he wasn't quite used to seeing on the woman he called Ba-chan. She locked her fingers before resting her chin upon them, waiting for the blonde's response. Naruto rubbed the back of his neck nervously. In all honesty, he really wasn't sure what it could be, after only just being released from hospital after a nasty brawl with a certain Uchiha. The only thought that came to mind was that new information had been obtained on the raven-haired boy's whereabouts. It's not about him, is it? He questioned nervously, still rubbing the back of his neck as he looked towards the proud blonde situated behind the old wooden desk. Tsunade winced slightly at the thought of Naruto being enthusiastic to hear about Sasuke when in fact that was not the reason she had called him to her office. Actually, it's more to do with the rescue mission that took place. You see, after scouting the area in which the series of battles took place, we came across a member of the Sound Four who was still alive. Tsunade paused, unsure on how to continue as she gauged the blonde's response. Still alive? Are they dangerous? Quote. He interrogated as he quickly angered. Those Sound Four really did a number on the rescue team. In fact, most of the members of said team were left hospitalized and fighting to survive. Not quite, Tsunade answered before scratching her head. She was unsure of how to go about this but thought it may just be best to get it over with. In fact, they're not dangerous at all in their current condition. However, they are no longer aligned with Orochimaru and it is of vital importance that they are well cared for. They'll be a lot to deal with, but honestly, Naruto, you're the only one I can count on for this. She briefed, almost feeling guilty for what she was about to drop on the blonde. What do you mean, Ba-chan? I don't really get it, he said with a nervous chuckle. Suddenly feeling a little under pressure, not to mention being somewhat embarrassed by her faith in him. Tsunade sighed, unable to think of a better option. She decided to just go with her current plan. Shizune, bring Tayuya in here. As the Hokage ordered, the door crept open as the overly polite assistant wheeled in a girl with shocking red hair, now free from the hat it was once contained in. Tayuya's wild hair flowed down her back. She sat arms folded in an act of defiance. Although she had agreed to become an ordinary Konoha citizen, she didn't say she was going to enjoy it. Naruto, this is Tayuya. She'll be living with you at your apartment. She'll need exclusive care and as such you will not be going on any missions until she has recovered. The Hokage said. As expected, the blonde looked disheartened. Naruto glanced towards the redhead sadly. He considered that she needed someone right now. Though he would miss going on missions, he had already been given a mission. One that his Ba-chan could only turn to him for. He'd do his best no matter what. The fuck are you looking at? The redhead challenged, noticing the blonde looking her way for an extended amount of time. He was lost in thought, but to her it appeared as if he was staring at her. I know not being able to stand is weird and all, but does he really have to fucking stare at me like I am a freak? Tayuya raged inwardly. Naruto shook his head clear of thoughts as he came back to reality. He smiled at the redhead, ignoring her earlier comment. It wouldn't be wise to start bickering, especially in front of the Hokage. Nice to meet you, Tayuya. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. He gave her a foxy grin before turning to the fifth once again. The cogs slowly turned in Naruto's mind as he processed what was actually going on. Wait, she's going to be living with me? He bellowed, suddenly outraged with the idea. How come he was getting someone randomly thrust into his home? What about the medical staff or the hospital? What made him any better suited for the situation than anyone else? Hey, it's not like I wanna sit around in some shit pit while you run around after me, asshole. Tayuya roared, her anger peaking as the blonde talked about her as if she wasn't even in the room. She glanced downwards at her legs, broken and battered. They were left in no working condition. The word, burden, hoed through her mind, but she refused to acknowledge it. Why do I care? If they wanna give me my own personal slaves, then that's up to them. She thought to herself, letting out a low growl aloud. Tsunade glared at the blonde boy in her office, causing him to let out a defeated sigh. He turned to the redhead who also seemed to be glaring at him. Nervously he offered a smile before scratching the back of his head. "Gee Goman, it's just well, I've lived alone my whole life, it's kinda sudden, you know." He apologized before nervously chuckling, but to his dismay the redhead merely huffed before turning away. "Well, it's settled then. Naruto, from here on out Tayuya is your responsibility, you're dismissed." Tsunade spoke until she had to correct herself. "Oh, and Naruto, due to the way Tayuya's legs are broken. It would be best if you carried her, it's not good for her to be sat in that position for an extended amount of time, please try to keep this in mind," she said calmly. She leant over her desk and began looking through the drawers, signifying the meeting was over. "Well Naruto, what are you waiting for?" she said, suddenly appearing above the desk once more, seemingly annoyed. Naruto was stood clueless in the office. He wasn't sure how to approach the delicate matter of picking up the redhead from out of her chair. "What the hell are you doing, asshole? Didn't you hear her? I'm not supposed to sit like this." Tayuya roared at the blonde who was currently suffering awkwardly. "Naruto, what are you doing?" the Hokage shouted, allying herself with the X-sound ninja. All right, I didn't wanna hurt her, geez," Naruto shouted back, letting out a heavy sigh. He crouched down in front of the chair. Tayuya, following his plan, wrapped her arms around his shoulders, as gently as he could manage. Naruto held the girl's legs before standing with her, carrying her in a piggy back. Tayuya felt slightly guilty as she heard him announce that he didn't want to hurt her, for some reason that she didn't understand. She felt that he truly had no intention of harming her. "Ah, don't you two look cute? Look Shizune, don't they make the best couple?" Tsunade teased, her Mishivu's side out in force, causing her assistants to giggle at the two in front of them. Naruto couldn't help but blush, though it didn't help that Tayuya nuzzled against his back in an attempt to hide her blushing face. "What are you waiting for, asshole? Get the hell going already," Tayuya demanded as she fought back her embarrassment. She never did take teasing well, besides it wasn't as if she wanted to be carried around. "Alright." Naruto, too embarrassed to function properly, merely agreed to the command, opening the door fully, intending on racing to his apartment to escape from any further teasing. As he opened the door, he saw Sakura stood there. The cherry blossom had her mouth ajar in shock as she saw her blonde teammate carrying an attractive girl who seemed to be snuggling into his back. Sakura shook off her momentary shock, giving a light cough before speaking, unsure what to say. "Naruto, it's good to see that you're feeling better," she offered awkwardly before squeezing past the two to escape into the office. She looked at the Hokage, who sat with a knowing smirk. Unable to resist, she glanced back at the two with a questioning gaze. It appeared the girl really was nuzzling into the blonde's back. Letting out a short HMPH, Sakura turned to the Hokage for orders. Naruto was soon carefully jumping from rooftop to rooftop, landing delicately to make sure he didn't hurt his passenger. He couldn't imagine that she was in any mood to talk, so stayed silent as he traveled across the village hidden in the leaves. To his surprise, however, the redhead spoke up. "So, I guess we'll be living together then," she thought aloud, hoping to start some form of conversation, looking at the back of the blonde's head waiting for a response. Naruto landed before speaking, to ensure he didn't accidentally land with unexpected force. "I guess so," Naruto answered, much to Tayuya's disappointment. She frowned. From what she remembered, the blonde was pretty outgoing. She found it odd that he'd be so quiet. "I guess you're not exactly excited about it, especially with me being an ex-member of that squad," she pushed. This time he had to respond properly. The silence was deafening. She really didn't know if she'd be able to sit through it day in day out. Naruto landed. He had stopped at his front door. Front door," he corrected in his head. "Don't worry about that, what's done is done, let's just start fresh," Naruto replied. She could somehow guess that he was smiling. She had to admit she was somewhat thankful, though she wouldn't let it show. Naruto pushed open the door and revealed a spotless one-bedroom apartment. There was wooden flooring running right through the place, and the living room area was the first thing visible upon entering. A tired-looking brown couch sat in the center of the room, with a small oak coffee table within reaching distance of it. Looking around the place, still on Naruto's back, Tayuya noticed the door leading to boy's bedroom. It was left open slightly, and from what she could make out, the bedroom, much like the rest of the apartment, was clinically clean. She couldn't help but notice the fresh smell that filled the air. Glancing around once more, she presumed it was due to the plant life that were proudly on display around the small apartment. To her surprise, they looked incredibly healthy, their leaves a luscious green. It was easy to see that they were well cared for. Still, she couldn't shake off the underlying aroma of beef ramen. Not wanting to give in to silence once again, Tayuya continued the conversation. "So, what made you wanna chase that faggot so bad anyway?" she said, hoping to get an answer. She wasn't sure on how to approach the topic but was more than a little curious, so she decided to be her usual self, brash and rather insensitive. She felt the blonde carrying her wince as he closed the door, memories of the fight at Death Valley returning to him. A weak smile decorated his face as he tried to ignore the rather tasteless way the girl had asked her question. It was his job to take care of her. No one mentioned that she was going to be cooperative. "He's my only real friend," Naruto saw it glumly, a sad smile gracing his features as he carefully set down the redhead on the old brown couch. She was laid comfortably across it and Naruto was soon out of her field of view as he walked away from her. She couldn't help but wonder just how much that Uchiha meant to this blonde. It was rather bizarre for her, a ninja caring about someone else so much. "There were times when we couldn't stand each other, we'd always fight. Never wanting to lose to the other." Naruto continued softly from the other room, stealing a glance at his team's photo as he spoke, though he soon reappeared much to the comfort of the girl. The idea of being alone in this hidden village was not exactly pleasant, though for some reason the blonde's facial expression made her feel guilty for even bringing up the subject of the raven. "This stupid-ass village is making me soft," she thought to herself, trying to shake it off. To her surprise, she felt two warm hands around her waist. She realized, however, that Naruto was merely adjusting her sitting position by providing her with soft pillows to rest on. "I'm sure you got other friends. What was so good about him? Do you love him or something?" the redhead asked, mocking the blonde with a smirk. To her shock, however, he simply closed his eyes momentarily, let out a soft sigh, then offered her another smile. She didn't really understand, but then again she didn't really care either. "I have other friends, sorta," he said, scratching at the back of his head. He frowned, thinking deeply about this, or so it seemed. He sat down by her feet on the beaten couch as if to help him with the matter. Then spoke again. "Honestly, if people saw us they'd doubt we were really friends at all, but that was the only way we knew how to be friends," he said, leaning back against the sofa arm as he did. A hint of regret in his voice was present throughout the conversation. Suddenly Naruto stood with an overly large grin on his face. "Well, there's no use in thinking too much about it. I'll bring him back one day," he said enthusiastically, then turned away, giving a disheartened look to the ground. "I promised," he muttered to himself, leaving Tayuya slightly confused. Huff, she decided she was now bored of hearing the blonde talk about the love of his life. "Hey asshole, as fascinating as all that was, I'm hungry," she said in a voice that told him she pretty much didn't care about what he had to say. Naruto, much to her annoyance, was now focused on reading the list of instructions left on his counter by the 5th Hokage. "Oi, I said I am hungry," she declared. It wasn't like she could get up and make something herself after all. Says here that you should bathe before you eat, something about the hot water being good for your legs," he said, not all that educated when it came to medical stuff. Sure, he could look after himself and knew symptoms of certain common things. This, however, did not mean he was a qualified doctor. He wondered if he would in fact be capable of caring for this girl. In honesty, he didn't mind having her around. It livened up the place at least. He'd just have to do his best. Great, let me just go ahead and do that then. Oh yeah, how could I have been so stupid? My fucking legs don't work, you asshole. She raged at the blonde. She hated not being able to do things that could be considered everyday things. It made her feel useless. Naruto just sighed and went into the bathroom. She heard the water running as it hit the bath below, suddenly filling the silent apartment with sound. She considered for a moment that she had truly hurt the blonde. He was trying. She could tell that much. That alone is more than anyone else has done, she considered before angrily shaking her head, confused once more by her sudden attitude. The change, though she had to admit she was a tiny bit concerned that the blonde still hadn't replied to her. He walked back into the living room, the bath still running as he headed towards the sink. Redhead couldn't help but follow him with her eyes unknowingly. She expected an answer. To her frustration though, the blonde merely filled up a small jug with water, then made a beeline to his prized plant life. He slowly poured water into the different plant pots with an amount of care that was strange to witness as the ex-sound ninja watched over him. He seemed to genuinely enjoy feeding them, she mused. As a warm smile graced his features. It wasn't long until the blonde had fed all of the plants around the room, in silence much to Tayuya's irritation. Naruto, hearing the water still running, went to check on the bath. Seeing it, he decided that it was full enough. Putting his hand in, he stirred the water, checking its temperature. Seemingly pleased, he stood in the doorway and smiled, silently telling the girl that her bath was indeed ready. She had to admit she didn't enjoy this. For some reason it just wasn't funny that she had hurt the blonde, with the way she was treating him. NCE the Hokage's office. She considered he didn't care what she thought of him, though now she wasn't so sure. Oi, she spoke. Naruto sighed, interrupting her, and hurriedly came to her side. She felt Hai's gentle touch before he picked her up bridal style, leaving her head softly lean against his chest. She noted that it wasn't exactly unpleasant, then gave a hmph, as if to correct herself. Naruto, doing his best to be mature about the awkward situation that he now found himself in, gently rest the girl on the floor, her back propped up against the bath, allowing her to sit up. Soon she was wrapped up in a soft cream towel. She didn't understand at first. Then the blonde began to remove her sandals. After removing them, he looked up at her to check if she was okay with his method. Tayuya, now are. Ather, embarrassed, merely turned her head away, allowing the boy to continue. Soon Naruto had carefully removed her combat pants, making sure not to hurt the girl by taking them off slowly. Still looking away, the redhead cooperated momentarily as the blonde lifted her arms in order to take off her shirt. Though the towel did help with the awkwardness somewhat, the ex-sound ninja still found herself blushing a shade that matched her hair as her arms disappeared into the towel. The blonde thankfully looked away, making it a little less embarrassing as the girl that was now a permanent resident in his home took off her remaining items of clothing. She gave a nervous cough, subtly informing him that she was finished. He turned slowly, unsure of how to proceed. The girl in front of him, now blushing heavily as she looked away, was now sat naked in his bathroom, with only a towel covering her. Deciding to just deal with the situation at hand, Naruto lifted her bridal style, then carefully lowered her into the bath, effectively soaking the towel much to her confusion. As Tayuya was lowered into the bath, she let out a soothed ah of relief, slightly embarrassed by the action. She was once more facing away from the blonde. Naruto just opened the simple white bathroom cupboard, revealing a soft-looking collection of cream towels much like the one that was currently wrapped around the girl. The blonde then set them out, leaving them folded over the bath at a distance she could reach, then left the room, closing the door to allow the girl some privacy. Tayuya removed the now irritating wet towel, then lay back, stretching out as she allowed the water to wash over her. The temperature was just how she liked it, not that she'd ever mentioned that. What the blonde had been told was correct. The soothing effect of the hot water was indescribable as she sunk even lower, enjoying the relaxing sensation, her red mane now flowing around her as she stared up at the ceiling. She let out a sigh as she considered that the blonde still hadn't spoken to her. It echoed around the bathroom due to the acoustics, making her feel even more disheartened. Maybe he's given up, she thought to herself, a little saddened. In the privacy she now had, she didn't bother fighting against the thought. She had always been lonely, no one had ever cared. She realized, of course, that getting to know her was incredibly difficult due to her defense mechanisms, her brash way of speaking that often hurt people, and of course her inability to allow anyone in. Now though, it seemed she didn't really have a choice. The redhead was now in a foreign village. After agreeing to become a citizen of Konoha, this would also be where she would be staying. Honestly, she felt a little lucky to even be alive at this point. While looking up at the blank white ceiling, she remembered the conversation she had with Tsunade before meeting the blonde. "You're making me live with someone." Tayuya spoke, doing her best to keep herself in check. This was the Hokage she was speaking to after all. "You're lucky you haven't been executed, you're in no position to start making demands." The Hokage spoke sternly, glaring at the redhead that had been brought to her attention. "Don't worry, the person you'll be staying with is the most caring person I've ever met. In fact, even though you were his enemy, if I told him I'd be executing a girl who couldn't even walk, Well, I'd be willing to bet my life that he'd fight for your freedom with everything he had, the Hokage explained. A sad smile graced her features, momentarily confusing the X-sound ninja before she softly continued. Even if it killed him. Why? Was the only answer Tayuya could manage to reply with. To her surprise, the fifth just shrugged. He doesn't see or much about himself, but if you were to tell him someone was in trouble, he'd do whatever he could to make them better. Hey, that brat is the only reason I am sat behind this desk right now and not sat in some bar drinking. Tsunade sighed, realizing she may have gotten a little too personal. Listen, the Hokage started again as Tayuya's attention snapped back to her. He might have a lot of problems. Well, he hasn't exactly led a great life, but the kid's got a heart of gold. Even if you step on him, push him around, hurt him until he wished he didn't exist, if he's decided you're a good person, he'll be there for you always. Tsunade said, surprising herself almost at the love she held for the young blonde. Tayuya looked to be in thought. Did such a person really exist? It had to be some kinda deception. What do you mean, hasn't exactly led a great life? Tayuya questioned. However, the fifth just shook her head solemnly, showing that she wasn't willing to talk about it. With that, Shizune wheeled her out of the office. The bath water, though still warm, was beginning to lose its initial soothing feeling as the redhead began to wonder just how long she had been laid there. Hey, I've managed to drive away someone the Hokage considers a saint. Tayuya thought to herself. To her surprise, a wet streak was suddenly present across her cheek, followed by another, then another. She soon realized she was crying. Aggressively wiping away the tears, she blamed her strange behavior on the fact that she had been in the bath too long. Removing the plug, she laid there, as the bath drained of its contents. And after a short while the water had left her. Reaching over to the soft cream towel, she began drying herself, struggling somewhat, though she managed. After she was done with a she was able to reach her underwear. After partly dressing herself, she did her best to wrap herself in one of the unused, dry towels, letting out a large sigh. She knew she needed help at this stage. Oi, she shouted weakly. Honestly, she hadn't even heard the blonde. For all she knew, he may not even be in the other room as she hoped. He really could have left her, and worst of all, there was nothing she could do about it. Cutting off her thoughts rather suddenly, though, the door creaked open. He offered a sad smile, one that she thought she may have caused. Unable to take it, she glanced away, uncomfortable with new situation. His warm hands gently touched her legs before he picked her up in a bridal style, her head once again softly resting against his chest, her hair still somewhat wet left streaks down his black tank top. The white Uzumaki swirl that decorated the center was now becoming almost gray due to the moisture. As soon as she was carried out of the bathroom, she was overwhelmed by a pleasant smell. She could see a simple chicken curry cooking alongside some boiling white rice, but for some reason she knew that a certain amount of care had been taken when preparing it, causing her lips to curve upwards slightly without her realizing it. He lay her down on the discolored brown sofa, the pillows keeping her upright, and despite its age, she had to admit the couch was pretty comfortable. Far more comfortable than she was used to anyway. She noticed the simple brush that was left well within her reach as Naruto went to tend to the cooking. Still silent, she couldn't help but notice. Again she felt guilty. The boy was still looking out for her, even in small ways that she wouldn't even consider. She pulled on the clothes left on the couch for her before picking up the brush. Struggling a little to balance, she did her best to comb through her long hair. Quickly becoming infuriated by the tangled locks, she began aggressively tugging at them in an attempt to comb through them. Naruto, hearing the violent noise, turned around without her noticing and was soon stood behind her. Gently his hand touched hers, stopping the violent motion before relieving her of the brush. She was confused, embarrassed, and once again feeling guilty, not knowing what to say. However, she sat in place silently. She felt warm fingers gently stroke through her strawberry locks, which almost caused her to shudder at the gentle touch. This continued for just a moment, then she felt the brush glide through her now untangled mane. As much as she hated to admit it, and never would, he found the feeling extremely relaxing, although incredibly foreign. You should take better care of it, the blonde spoke quietly while continuing to comb her tangled hair. Why the fuck do you care? She snapped, not even shouting. She wondered why she said what she did, wondering if it was the fact she felt she didn't deserve his kindness. Perhaps she was actually trying to drive him away. She considered maybe Maybe she even wanted him to deal with everything she could throw at him and still be there for her. Maybe I am going fucking soft more like. She raged to herself suddenly. Naruto wasn't sure if it was wise to give his reason, but decided it was better to be honest. Well, it's just really pretty, it would be a shame if you didn't look after it, he said nervously, adding AC. Huckle to hopefully make the compliment less awkward. He considered he was not one to mention hair care seeing as his now long hair had outgrew its usual style. Whatever. Tayuya retorted as she fought down a blush. Hearing a soft chuckle from behind her which only served to add fuel to the fire, the redhead became infuriated. What the fuck is so funny? She roared at the blonde who was still gently caring for her hair. It's just that, despite the way you act, you're a good person, Tayuya-chan. The ex-sound ninja was suddenly glancing down at her knees as she remembered what Tsunade had said to her. Before realizing the honorific, confident that she was being mocked, Tayuya twisted her body, ready to bite the blonde's head off, but to her surprise she was only met with a warm smile, making her falter. Thanks, I guess. I mean, isn't the food burning or something? She said softly, her crappy attempt to change the subject almost making her cringe at the sound of her voice saying it aloud. That's right, I better check on it, he said with a smile, happy to be free from the somewhat awkward moment. He handed her the brush back and was pleased to see from the corner of his eye that the redhead was in fact combing through her hair with a lot more care. Who the fuck taught you to cook? Tayuya yelled as she took her first mouthful of the simple chicken curry. The blonde Simi. A little hurt from the outburst was happy when she continued. Seriously, if I get to eat like this every night, living with your sorry ass might not be so bad. She announced before tucking into our food at a speed that surprised even Naruto. Happy with the compliment, the blonde merely finished his meal with a smile, sat at the side of his new flatmate's feet. He considered that having the redhead around may not be so bad after all. Soon the two had finished. Naruto was seen at the sink as he set to cleaning up. He hated it when the place was a mess. To him, if it was messy, it seemed like each person didn't care about the place they were living in, which was the exact opposite of Naruto. To the blonde's surprise, there was a knock on the door. Tayuya looked at the door with distaste. She was comfortable stretched out on the sofa and no way in hell was she moving. Though it was okay for Naruto to sit beside her, she supposed it was his apartment after all. Oh, hey Sakura-chan, Naruto said happily, his voice a tone that Tayuya hadn't heard him use. He opened the door wider, allowing the cherry blossom girl to enter, who then smiled towards the redhead. Tayuya merely growled before looking away. Wow, something smells good. You should have told me you could cook, Naruto, Sakura declared before giggling innocently as the blonde rubbed the back of his head in embarrassment. Well, T's nothing special really, he replied, offering a nervous chuckle in his defense. I hope you're taking care of your new roommate, Sakura yelled happily. Although she sounded somewhat stern, she knew Naruto would have probably been fussing over his guest already. He is, Tayuya said flatly before smirking towards the Pinkett, who couldn't help but frown. What the hell are you doing here anyway, Pinky? Did the Hokage send you to check on me? The redhead continued, bored of listening to the two teammates talk without her. Sakura's frown deepened at the way the girl had spoken to her, but trying to keep face, she offered a fake smile as she tried to fight back her rage. No, Tsunade-sama didn't send me. I just dropped by to visit Naruto to make sure he wasn't still injured. He has a tendency to leave the hospital without resting properly, Sakura said, a little saddened at the mention of Naruto and his frequent visits to the hospital. Well, I can see you're looking much better now, Naruto. Good night. The cherry blossom spoke with a smile, but before Naruto could respond, the Pinkett hugged him tightly, whispering something to him. Tayuya glared at the scene. She didn't know why, but she did not like what she was witnessing one bit. Some girl came into her new home and started well. She just wasn't comfortable with it. It was awkward. Who the hell does she think she is? Coming here acting all smug like she owns the place. Telling secrets and shit. If she has something to say, she should just say it. The redhead raged inwardly, unsure of why she was so angry. Sakura unhugged the embarrassed, confused blonde before heading over to the doorway. Good night, Sakura-chan, he said with an embarrassed grin. Tayuya shot daggers at him at the use of chan after Sakura's name. Letting out a low growl, the redhead decided waiting any longer for the Pinkett to leave would be too sickening for her to take. "Good night, Pinky," Tayuya said coldly, earning a look from the cherry blossom girl. Knowing where she was not welcome, she managed to flash a smile to the ex-sound ninja before taking her leave. "So?" Tayuya immediately questioned as soon as the door closed. Naruto tilted his head, confused at what the girl situated on his couch meant by her question. "What the hell did she say to you?" Tayuya roared from her seat, folding her arms to make her impatience known. The blonde just chuckled nervously. Well, she just wanted to thank me for trying to bring Sasuke back. She's always." The blonde stopped himself a little heavy-hearted before steeling himself to continue. "Well, she's always liked Sasuke," he finished, a sad smile present on his face. Tayuya noted the way he paused, though for some reason she couldn't help but smile inwardly as she heard that the Banshee already had her eyes on someone. Naruto disappeared into the bedroom without saying anything further. Unknown to him, however, Tayuya could see into the room from where she was. She watched He blonde curiously as he pulled something off of his bedside table. It was what looked to be a small picture frame. Naruto sighed heavily as he looked down at the only photo he owned, his team photo. The smiling Pinkett in the center, while he and Sasuke flat out refused to accept one another. To him it was his team in a nutshell. Kakashi was even smiling, ignoring the petty bickering that was taking place. His lips were pulled upwards slightly as he remembered some of his happier Team 7 moments. A soft, genuine laugh echoed around the apartment as he thought about their Junin test. "Even he great Sasuke Uchiha was forced to feed me," he chuckled again, a little more sadly this time. Gently setting the frame back on the bedside table, he left the bedroom, just in time to hear the red that would now be a permanent guest at his home, let out a rather large yawn. "Tired?" he asked with a warm smile. The redhead, not feeling like snapping at the boy after what she just saw, only nodded sleepily in response. The blonde was soon by her side, and like the other times he had carried her around, he picked her up bridal style, being careful not to cause her discomfort. She had to say shish. He was momentarily surprised that Naruto switched to holding her with just one arm while pulling back the bed quilt. Feeling relaxed, however, she didn't feel like even mentioning it as he softly placed her onto the comfortable mattress below. Naruto looked down at her as he pulled the blanket over her. He was glad. She looked a lot happier than when she first arrived in his care. He found himself hoping that he was something to do with it as she stared back up at him, her chocolate brown eyes looking deep into his cerulean blue ones. Before she could speak, however, Naruto smiled and spoke. "Good night to Yuya-chan," he said softly. Then gave her another warming smile. She couldn't help but avert her gaze before responding. "Why yeah, good night." She cleared her throat, then said something at a speed that Naruto struggled to understand. Naruto-kun." Still looking away as a blush formed on her face, she was happy that the blonde never made a big deal out of it. In fact, she was happy. A smile came her features, causing Naruto's smile to grow wider. The blonde turned and left the room, leaving the door open as he turned the living room light off. Pulling the blanket over himself, Naruto did his best to get comfortable on his trusty old couch, and after a few minutes of fidgeting he managed to find a position he was happy with. Letting out a content sigh, he now was pleased that he didn't live alone. He felt needed in a way that he couldn't quite describe. The blonde resting on the sofa eventually closed his eyes, though he lay awake thinking like he did most nights, having to stroke long blonde hair out of his eyes every now and again due to laying on his side didn't really help. Still, he wasn't complaining. Almost an hour passed or so, he'd imagined. He'd heard the gentle noise of Tayuya's blankets being shifted around for a long time, making him consider that she'd been asleep for quite some time. Until he heard the aggravated "arg" that she let out as she struggled sleep. "Asshole," she shouted quietly, only to get no response. "Asshole," she yelled in a hushed tone once again, this time wondering if he was actually asleep. Naruto realized there was a pause, as if the redhead had given up. Then he heard a gentle cough. Naruto-kun," she questioned with no small amount of embarrassment. "What is it, Tayuya-chan?" he answered softly. The redhead looking up at the plain white ceiling now sported a blush as she heard her newly given affectionate nickname. "Can you come in here already?" she asked softly. Naruto, a little taken back by the request, figured it was something important. Pulling off his blanket and removing himself from the comfortable position he had managed to find, he headed towards his bedroom, well, what used to be his bedroom. She saw him enter the bedroom from the corner of her eye, her nervousness coming back in force as soon as he did. It would have been easier to ask him without him being in the room. Good going, she chased herself as he now peered down at her. As he looked down at her, for some reason she thought it was a good idea to remember that he had complimented her hair, causing her cheeks to become a similar shade of red. Is everything okay, Tayuya-chan? He asked, leaning over her slightly to make sure she could see him in the dimly lit room, although the window was directly right of the bed. The cloudy night didn't do well in providing a source of light. Can't sleep, she said flatly, her embarrassment clear as she stuttered out her words while fighting down a soft blush, thankful that the room was not brightly lit. Is there anything I can do to help? He asked softly, smiling down at her as he once again got the feeling of being needed. Well, I'm not really used to sleeping alone. At the hideouts we always had to share a bed. I had to sleep top to bottom with kin, she said, opening up to the blonde a little while rambling to try and beat around the bush. It was difficult for her to ask this kind of thing. So, you'd like me to sleep like that with you? Naruto asked, not sure where the redhead was going with this. A fierce blush lit up her cheeks as she answered. Well, I mean, so. RTA but like, kinda. Well, you don't have to sleep at the other end, she spat out, shrinking back under the blankets a little in an attempt to hide herself from the mockery that would surely be thrown upon her. To her surprise, Naruto just left the room. Before she could complain though, he was back, armed with his pillows as he placed them down next to the X-Sound ninjas. He pulled back the sheets while looking at her, silently asking her if she was sure. The redhead only looked at him expectantly, almost forcing him in with her stare. Naruto climbed in the bed in one quick movement, pulled he blanket over them and rested his head on the pillows. Then came the awkward part. He turned on his side, glancing at the girl next to him, and suddenly the two were both aware of just how close they actually were. Naruto was thankful that the girl was staring up at the ceiling and not facing him. Somehow it made this situation a little less embarrassing. Then the redhead turned on her cheek, facing him, her hair following her movement as it fell over her eyes. To her surprise though, a finger gently stroked it away, then continued to comb through her hair. She shivered from the soft touch. Biting back her embarrassment, she threw one of her arms around the blonde, using him to allow herself to roll on her side. Naruto surprised her a second time as a hand softly trailed across her stomach. Until an arm was roped around her waist. Not being given the time to voice her opinion, she was carefully pulled close to him, her head resting underneath his chin. Not caring about her incredible embarrassment any longer, the redhead nuzzled against the boy's chest, as her grip around him tightened. The feeling of being held close was completely foreign to her, but she couldn't help but feel warm and safe. His hand traced through her soft red mane as he continued to stroke it. The girl nuzzling into his chest was letting out soft hitched breaths as he did so. He rested his chin upon her head as he hugged her a little tighter. He shivered slightly as he felt Tayuya trace her fingers up and down his back lightly, letting out a giggle that he didn't know she could produce. Deciding to get his own back, he leant over her slightly, then blown a soft stream of cold air against her neck, almost immediately causing her to shiver and nuzzle against him in defiance, letting out a soft yawn as she did so. The redhead squeezed her blonde caretaker softly as a feeling of happiness she had never experienced washed over her. Good night, Naruto-kun, she whispered, still a little embarrassed. Huff. She felt her gentle squeeze returned as the blonde held her close. Night, Tayuya-chan, he replied, barely audible as the two drifted off into a peaceful sleep. My apologies. I know it's no The Hunted, but I intend for chapter 13 to have a lot of stuff going on, and I am not quite sure what all of it is yet, haha. Naruto is one of my favorite pairings, and wanted to write a story more based around them. Of course I will still be working on The Hunted. I intend to write a lot, and in case you're wondering, this chapter only took a day to write. Productive is so unlike me, I must be getting sick, haha. Tayuya groaned painfully as she slowly began to wake up. She had somehow managed to roll over onto her chest in her sleep, leaving her head buried in the soft cotton pillow. The X-Sound nin shook her head softly. Denying the sudden displeasure of waking up while wiping her drool-stained face, this kunoichi was really not a morning person. The sun's rays gently illuminated the small apartment, piercing through the closed navy blue metal shutter blinds, stabbing at the chocolate eyes of the sleepy redhead, causing her to groan again. To her annoyance, the birds outside happily began to chirp their merry tune, very much enjoying the beautiful summer's morning. The clear blue sky was lined with soft fluffy clouds and a soothing delicate breeze rolled through Konoha, riveting relief to the pleasant hot sunny weather. Tayuya reluctantly opened her tired eyes, noting that she was sprawled across the center of the bed. She couldn't feel her blonde caretaker anywhere nearby, especially not in the bed. Her eyes widened slightly as a heavy blush washed over her, immediately burying her face deeply into the pillow. The sleepy musician hid her embarrassment while remembering the previous night. What was I thinking? Tayuya raged inwardly, having no idea what had come over her as the two of them had laid in the comfort of each other's embrace. She shut her eyes tight in denial. This fucking village really is making me soft. The redhead whined as her face glowed a soft pink. She punched one of the pillows beside her in anger, not wanting to accept reality. Well, at least he isn't here right now. Fuck, that would have been awkward. She mused with a heavy sigh, trying to reassure herself that everything was fine. Thankful that the blonde had gotten up before her. Tayuya worked on calming her blush, doubting that her face could become any more red than it already was, though she sure as hell didn't want to test that theory. Naruto was happily cooking in the kitchen. He stood over the stove enjoying the pleasant morning while making breakfast for the two of them. To the blonde it was nothing special, just some white rice along with some of the leftover spiced chicken from their meal yesterday, miso soup and a hot cup of coffee. The Hokage wannabe didn't really like coffee all that much but figured Tayuya was the kind of person who would. Smiling a little sadly, he remembered it was the third Hokage who had bought it for him. The man would sit with him for a while on mornings if his tight schedule allowed it, enjoying the simple drink in the boy's company. Naruto shook his head solemnly, but he was glad he had such precious memories of the elder. Oi, asshole, I'm awake, he heard her yell loudly from the other room. The blonde had closed the door after leaving the room, being careful to not wake her up as he prepared their breakfast. I'm glad I got up first. I think it would be best to stay quiet about yesterday, after all she's new to the village. It must be pretty scary, especially with her condition. Anyone could use comforting in a situation like that. Naruto thought wisely to himself. He wasn't exactly big on intellectual thoughts and discussions, but if there's one thing he did understand, it was ways to avoid getting punched by girls. Sakura had educated him on that. Yoo-hoo, asshole, I'm awake now. Little help, she rudely summoned, clapping her hands to make as much noise as possible, causing the blonde lovingly nicknamed asshole to sigh, letting out a chuckle as he did. He opened the door to the bedroom with a caring smile, trying his best to make her feel welcome. Tayuya was laid out on her back now, staring at the doorway intently with a light blush dusting over her features. "Tch, took you long enough," she shot with a sly smirk, mocking him as he came over to her. "Morning Taiyu-chan, I was just making breakfast." He gave a foxy grin while happily looking down at her. She immediately looked away from him at the sound of the nickname he'd given her, causing the Hokage wannabe to chuckle softly, pulling back her blankets as he did. "So where will it be, miss?" Naruto asked with a cheery smile. She rolled her eyes as he scooped her up bridal style, letting her head gently press against his chest. Though Tayuya was instantly reminded of the night before, she didn't fight against it and let her head hang limp against him. Enjoying the closeness. "Tch, he hasn't really done anything wrong after all. It was my fault that shit happened," she considered thoughtfully as he walked towards the living room. Sure, she could be a bitch and she knew it, but the redhead wasn't stupid. In fact, Tayuya had managed to almost best Shikamaru in their battle of wits, meaning that while she was exactly great at controlling her feelings or emotions, sometimes she could at least understand them and force herself to remain calm, on a good day at least. "Oh man, something smells awesome." He perked up with excitement as they entered the main body of the apartment. The smell of the frying spiced chicken sizzling in its pan had invaded her nose, making her stretch up in the blonde's arms, trying to peek over at just what it was he was whipping up. "Yup, nothing fancy. Just leftovers and rice." He beamed happily while giving a childish pout. If I had my way I'd be eating ramen, every day, every meal. He muttered with disappointment while traveling over to the tired brown couch. The blonde placed her down as she looked up at him with sudden curiosity. What's so fucking good about ramen anyway? She questioned with irritation. To her it was just a simple dish. Sure, it made a good snack, but the ramen she had eaten always tasted processed, with an underlying discomfort that it definitely wasn't good for her body. It fills you with determination. Naruto chirped with joy as he glanced over at the smirking Kunoichi. So then just fucking eat it. You got your own place, so it's not like you got any rules. She ordered with a huff. To her it was the most obvious thing in the world. Then again, she considered the blonde wouldn't exactly remain in good health if all he ate was noodles. Eros Sennin would kick my ass. Naruto muttered with clear displeasure. He sounded like a wounded puppy whining like that. To his surprise, Tayuya burst into laughter at the nickname he'd given his teacher. Who the fuck is Eros Sennin? The Kunoichi spat while laughing again. She didn't think the blonde could be so disrespectful to someone. In a way, it made her feel a little better about how she talked. Huh. Oh. He's one of the 3 Sannin. He's super strong. Naruto felt himself face palm as he tried to describe his godfather to the girl below him without embarrassing himself in the process. But he's also a super pervert. He peeps in hot springs and writes these really weird books that Kakashi-sensei reads all the damn time. Why are all my teachers perverts? He careful. Lee explained before yelling desperately at the realization. Yeah, well, you better not be like them. Try anything funny and I'll scoop out your eyes and feed them to your asshole for dinner. Tayuya aggressively huffed, crossing her arms to make a point, even going as far as to close her eyes as if done with the conversation. A deadly silence echoed around the room. The redhead opened her chocolat eyes to look at the stunned blonde who was staring at her in disbelief, clearly terrified. What? Did I say something wrong? She questioned innocently. Naruto looked at her in confusion. Scary. He murmured with fear and shot over to the kitchen to plate up breakfast, causing Tayuya to laugh and shake her head at his antics. She felt herself with a pleasant smile creeping over her face, then frowned suddenly, irritated. TCH. I'm in a fucking enemy village. I shouldn't be enjoying this. The X-sound Nin growled in frustration. Something about the blonde just made her not care about an Y thing of that nature, and a part of her was seriously enjoying the peace, the feeling of someone being there for her. Her frown deepened. Tayuya also knew that it was too good to be true. There had to be reasoning behind all this. Maybe Naruto was simply part of a huge plan that she wasn't aware of. She closed her eyes sadly, hating to admit it to herself, but that would really fucking hurt. I should at least be more careful. The redhead considered with newfound determination. She let the annoyed scowl fade from her features as she watched over the oblivious blonde. If he wants to win me over, he's going to have to do a lot better than this. She felt herself slowly weaken at the blonde's smile as he brought over her food, causing her to unknowingly let out a soft growl, feeling conflicted. Tayuya knew the blonde was doing everything he could to make her stay pleasant, and that's what worried her most. Whoa. Relax, girl, I'm just here to give you your food, okay? He teased as she continued to snarl. Are you calling me an animal? The fiery Kunoichi roared back angrily, doing her best to hold her frown and displeased glare as her chocolate eyes met his startled sapphires. Huh, of course not, just making a joke, he said with one of his stupid foxy grins lighting up his face with a warmth that caused her to waver slightly. Before she lost her strength, she continued. Yeah, well, it's not fucking funny. She instantly peeled her eyes away from his hurt look, choosing to glare down at her delicately prepared breakfast, the fact that he had arranged her chicken into a smiley face upon her rice only made her stomach twist with a feeling of guilt. Such a damn loser. Tayuya argued with herself as she saw the childish display. She began quickly shoving the food into her mouth, as if trying to kill the happy face on her plate. Sorry, I just really like to make people laugh. The blonde replied softly. She looked up at him expecting to see his face torn with hurt. To her surprise, though, he was the picture of happiness. A face-splitting grin was stretched across his features and his eyes were shut tight in a laughing manner. Naruto got up quietly before she could even say something in response. He'd stumped her with his smile at her actions. The silence had become awkward, but seeing him carefully feeding his plants without another word to her only reminded her of yesterday when she had hurt his feelings. Tayuya knew that he was thinking of how he could make things better, the plants were merely buying him time. Thanks for the meal, she thought to herself, frustrated. As the words wouldn't leave her mouth. Just say it, UGHH. Fuck. Why is this so difficult? I hate this place. She angrily clenched her hands into fists as she warred with herself. The redhead was beginning to hate all of these new feelings. Before coming to Konoha she only had one setting to worry about, pissed off. Now she was struggling to deal with kindness and companionship. It was totally new to her, yet she couldn't help feeling weak for enjoying it. She shouldn't care at all, he was just some blonde kid. Her eyes widened in surprise as she heard someone carefully slump down on the couch next to her. The sound of running water had only now reached her ears. Naruto wordlessly picked her up, carrying her into the bathroom, just like yesterday he dressed her in. A soft cream fluffy towel and helped her to strip off, then carefully lifted her into the soothing hot water, causing her to hold back a breath of relief. Naruto then left the room in silence, still not sure what he could say to make the circumstances between the two any brighter. Maybe she just wants some space, this whole village thing is new to her I guess. He thought to himself, trying his best to be understanding. As the creaky white bathroom door closed behind him, he walked over to the faithful brown couch, slumping down glumly while reading over Tsunade's medical list, looking up and on the sheet to make sure he was caring for her accordingly. He felt his brow furrow, glaring somewhat angrily at the sheet of paper as he thought of his feelings. Maybe I'm not the right person for this kind of mission, Oba-chan. He thought sadly to himself as he peered over the document she had written for him. His grip tightened on it as he thought about the people he knew, the way they treated him and muttered about him behind his back no matter what he did to try and earn their respect. He clutched his eyes shut, attempting to crush the feeling that was washing over him. He always tried his best, and no matter what he did he just couldn't do it right. I'll just have to do better. No one said this was going to be easy. Hell, she doesn't even have to like it and I don't have to be her friend. This is a mission and I won't disappoint you, Oba-chan. He refueled his determination, snapping out of his somber thoughts. Alone in his apartment it was easy to let them get the best of him. This was his place to be weak. To give himself a break and admit to himself that actually the crap in his life did hurt, but it was okay to feel that way as it made him more determined to prove everyone that he was just as dependable as anyone else. Oi! The weak cry from the bathroom shook him from his thoughts. The blonde had lost track of time, but now Naruto knew he had to try his best. With a renewed smile he headed over to the door, taking a deep breath before pushing it open to look at her wet figure. How was it? Was the water okay? He offered, attempting to break the ice as he scooped her out of the bath carefully. Gentle pink dusting his cheeks due to the situation, though she just folded her arms around her chest and closed her eyes as her head fell against his chest, huffing in displeasure. It was fine I guess. The redhead replied with finality, hoping to end the conversation dead in its tracks. A deep crimson washed over her face as she felt him looking over her half-naked form. This only caused the blonde to feel a grin form on his features. He was used to Sasuke cutting off conversations, so her attempt did little to shut him up. Great. As soon as you're ready we can go out and get some fresh air, he announced sweetly to her as he carefully placed her down in her spot. On the tired old couch, she shuffled against the cozy brown furniture as began to dress herself. HMPH. What if I don't want to get some fresh air, Tilda? She angrily spat back at him, mocking his cheery tone. His eyes narrowed dangerously as he felt his frown come back with force. Then I can leave your ass here and go myself, he replied softly, his tone icy cold, the kind that demanded respect, a voice that could command even the strongest of ninja. But it wasn't this that shocked her. The redhead's eyes widened in surprise at the hurt in his voice. He didn't even shout his response, but it would have probably scared her less if he had just angrily screamed at her. Tayuya felt that familiar sinking feeling in her stomach. Her eyes locked on her knees. She had dressed herself while mocking him and now she couldn't even pull her eyes up to look the blonde, her face twisted in frustration as she thought over her actions. She didn't understand anything anymore, why she was treating him this way, why she was pushing him away from her. All she knew was that he was just going to be another person that she would lose. Just like all the rest. She looked up weakly as she heard the bedroom door slam shut. He was dressed in his orange jacket and ready to leave with or without her. Naruto could feel her looking at him though he didn't turn to meet her gaze. He wasn't going to let her walk all over him, not in his own damned home. He felt sorry for her situation, sympathetic, and of course he wanted to help. To be her friend and be close to her, the Uzumaki even found himself wondering why things couldn't just be like yesterday night, enjoying each other's company. Hell, even when she first woke up she seemed cheery. Naruto, however, was definitely not the type to let people push him around. He was as stubborn as it comes. His bickering with a certain raven was proof of that, and though he was kind, caring and usually gentle, he had always been pretty quick to bite back if anyone was treating him badly. Tayuya wanted to apologize, she just couldn't. Something about herself was making it impossible to say the simple words. The redhead was again thinking it was awful to see him hurt or upset. It wasn't like when she mocked or cursed at other people who'd just get pissed off with her. It was completely different. He was there for her. The only reason he was doing any of this was for her. Tayuya knew that she was just throwing all his hard effort right back in his face like she was some prisoner of war. Why do I always have to be so difficult? I'm stuck here, in this shithole. Even if I hate it then it won't change anything, so maybe, I guess. She reprimanded herself sadly as she eyed the blonde longingly as he moved towards the front door of the apartment. I want to come too. She cried out initially, yet her voice weakly drifted off into barely a whisper as she lost her confidence. Surprisingly, the blonde turned on his heel, questioning her motives as his cerulean eyes pierced her smooth chocolate orbs. The X-sound Nin felt the crushing weight of his stare. It took everything she had just to force herself not to look away. After a few seconds, seemingly pleased, the blonde moved over to her, crouching down delicately besides the tired brown couch ready to carry her in a piggyback. She wrapped her arms around his broad shoulders, marveling in the touch once more as she let her arms snake around him while he lifted her wordlessly, carrying her from the aging couch to the sunny outside world. In silence, Naruto locked the door. The sound of the key turning felt deafening in their moment of quiet as the two exited the apartment. The gentle sun beat down upon them and the Hokage wannabe noticed the redhead shuffling around on his back. His face the picture of surprise as he felt Tayuya's nose softly tickle the back of his neck. A light dusting of pink washed over his cheeks as he felt a strange warmth rise through his stomach, but the blonde managed to calm himself, assuming she was merely getting comfortable. Tayuya couldn't help attempting to show the Uzumaki that she was sorry in some way. She tried snuggling into his neck, hoping he'd realize it was a hug or an act of affection. Just to be sure, her arms tightened around him a little. Naruto stopped momentarily as he carried her down the steps of his apartment. He knew for sure she was hugging him from behind and couldn't help the small smile that crept across his features. He let out a soft sigh. The way she could switch behavior so quickly was kinda cute. Not that he was brave enough to let her know. They reached the bottom of the secluded apartment building, causing Naruto to unroll a ceiling scroll. With a flare of chakra and a puff of smoke, the dreaded wheelchair appeared by his side. Sorry Taiyu-chan, you got a ride in your chair, I know yo. You can't sit upright for too long, but Oba-chan's instructions said it would keep your back in check. Well, something like that anyway. He spoke apologetically before mumbling, a little unsure as he scratched his forehead with a finger in slight confusion, obviously struggling to recall the details of the medical instructions Tsunade had left for him. That's okay, as long as it's not for too long. Shit gets painful, she replied flatly with a forced calmness, doing her best to hold a good attitude. She hated the damned chair though, it made her feel more like a burden than she already did, causing her to scowl in frustration. Naruto had to admit he missed her warmth as he delicately placed her into her new form of transport. His back now felt as if there was something missing, almost saint-like he had forgotten to wear a backpack. It wasn't long before the two of them had reached the village center. To Naruto it wouldn't be acceptable to simply allow Tayuya to stay in the dark, uneducated with no one to show her the way. No, that simply wouldn't do. He was going to enlighten her. Here we are. The world's best ramen, Naruto announced happily as he scooped up Tayuya from her chair. Then gently placed her down on one of the customer stools, sealing away her wheelchair as he did. The redhead didn't complain. To her the place was cozy with a relaxed, lazy atmosphere. She much preferred something like this than a high-end restaurant full of arrogant money grabbers that took life too seriously. She just wasn't into that. sophisticated, lifestyle. Though the way some people were shooting her and Naruto curious looks was really starting to bug her, it was like they had seen a couple of ghosts or something. "Oh, Naruto-kun, lovely to see you as always." Ayame chirped merrily as the boy grinned up at her. Sitting down alongside the feisty redhead, who had for some reason folded her arms, huffing in annoyance as she heard the girl welcome them with a cheerful tone, Tayuya presumed it was simply customer service, yet it irritated her all the same. "Ayame ne-chan, I'm here on a super important mission," Naruto announced with no small amount of excitement. Tayuya's brows rose slightly with curiosity. She wondered if he was referring to her as super important. Heat began to rise in her cheeks, but she quickly shot it down, choosing to glare at the shop assistant instead. "TCH. The hell she thinks she's doin' actin' so nice, bet she's about to bleed us for all the cash we got." Tayuya fumed safely in her thoughts. She didn't want to push any more trouble on Naruto at the moment. She still felt a little guilty for her actions, so for now, she would behave. "Oh tilde. You couldn't mean that super important mission, could you, Naruto-kun?" the serving girl inquired happily, leaning over the counter with an affectionate smile as she enjoyed the blonde's visit. A certain gleam appeared in the young Uzumaki's eye that told her everything she needed to know. "Right. This is Tayuya's first visit to the greatest ramen store in the whole world. 2 of your finest Naruto specials please, ne-chan." Naruto yelled enthusiastically, which earned a deadpan look from the redhead sitting beside him. Ayame couldn't help but let out a soft giggle. I tilde coming right up," she replied sweetly with a mock salute. Disappearing towards the back of the stall to prepare their meals, Naruto sat happily. Barely being able to contain his joy, a cheeky grin had ripped open his face while he leant back, resting his head on the back of his hands lazily. "This place. The best ramen in the world. If that were true, it would be fucking huge." Tayuya piped up in disbelief. To her it was cozy and charming, yes, but she had to admit, she had her doubts. Naruto whirled around on his stool, a wounded look on his face as he spoke in defense. Hey, don't be like that, Tayuya-chan. It's like that thing old man Hokage used to say. What was it again? Something about a dirty diamond being really awesome when it was cleaned. TCH, well, it doesn't matter about that, right? Just try it, you'll see it's the best. He persevered, having to hold his chin in deep thought, trying as he may to recall the third's wording. Unfortunately for Naruto, he delivered it without infinite wisdom that the elder seemed to achieve. "It's a diamond in the rough," Tayuya corrected, clearly unimpressed. Still, she wasn't complaining. She didn't remember the last time she had ever eaten out at a restaurant. Such a small thing meant was a big deal to her. It was interesting, she had to admit. The blonde's faith in the place was starting to sway her. A warmth surfaced in her stomach, spreading soothing heat across her body. "Hey, I guess this is kinda like a date. He even called me that fucking dumb-ass pet name again," she thought innocently. Her mind had wandered as she worked her best to ignore the blonde's contagious smiles. Yeah, that was it. Manu and Gigi would have got along great. He cheered happily, not noticing his redhead partner in crime flinch at his words. She had been one of Orochimaru's assistants in killing the beloved leader, not that she felt like reminding her caretaker. Suddenly her mind snapped to attention as realization hit her a second time. Wait, this is like a fucking date, she confirmed, immediately alarmed by her situation as it clicked together in her mind. She blushed a deep crimson, glaring at the floor, letting her hair cover her embarrassed features as she slugged the blonde on his arm, making him yelp a injured "ow" as he quickly snapped his attention back to her. Don't fucking call me Tayuya-chan out here, shithead," she muttered quietly to him. To her amazement, Naruto's only retaliation was a soft huff at her expense. It sounded warm and carefree, as if he enjoyed seeing this side of her, which of course, only challenged her feelings even more. She was ready to snap her face upwards and bite his head off when the waitress arrived. "Here we are, 2 Naruto specials. Enjoy, tilde," Ayame charmingly announced, rescuing the blonde as the enticing scent of the freshly prepared ramen caught Tayuya's attention. She couldn't deny it certainly smelled like it might just be the best ramen in the world. Would she give him the satisfaction of knowing this? Absolutely not. She felt Naruto's eyes glued to her as she gingerly lifted her chopsticks closer to her lips. The mouth-watering noodles were quickly scooped up with an undignified slurping noise. Tayuya reviewed the tasty treat in her mouth. Her eyes widened in wonderment as the simple meal bursted with flavor. It was a taste that could only be achieved with loving care. She let a escape her, then suddenly shoveled the ramen into her trap with a pace that would give any Uzumaki a run for their money. The X-sound nin didn't even seem to care that the broth was flying everywhere. Naruto's heart jumped for joy, a proud smirk dressing his features as he gave a hearty chuckle. "See, what did I tell you? It's the best in the whole world." He boomed with pride, puffing out his chest making a show of himself. He couldn't help but smile mischievously when he heard Ayame in the back of the stall giggling at his behavior. "Can it, asshole? I'm not gonna waste my time talking to you when I can be eating food like this," she roared dismissively, leaning over again once more. She almost dipped her face in the bowl as she unceremoniously enjoyed the dish. Naruto turned to his own meal with a softer, more genuine smile. It had been a long time since anyone had really sat down with him and eaten here since Iruka or Kakashi. He would never admit he was disappointed that they never shared his excitement in downing bowl after bowl of delicious ramen as fast as humanly possible. Granny Tsunade had taken him to a dango stand a few times, as she didn't really share his love of ramen. It was there that he had been amazed at just how fast the Hokage and a certain snake lad could polish off the sweet dumplings, but it wasn't really the same as what he was feeling now. He stole a glance at Tayuya. Something about the way she just didn't seem to care about what people thought of her, really made him feel happy. He felt as if he understood that she wasn't frightened to be herself around him, and she shared moments like this with him. It made him feel really warm and safe, as if wrapped in a caring embrace. To some this might not be much, but to Naruto it was huge. He had no one, his memories of friends were his prized possessions. This was no doubt being added to his collection. A merry chuckle escaped him as he went to destroying all traces of his own ramen. Man, that was good shit," Tayuya declared pleasantly as she sat up from her meal, wiping her face with her arms. The redhead leant back lazily, stretching comfortably while yawning. She smirked happily while patting her full belly to show her enjoyment. "Ah, well, I'm glad you enjoyed it. Chan tilde," Ayame teased playfully while retreating to the back of the stall. Giggling mischievously as she made her escape, the redhead felt her blood boil, her cheeks lighting up a deep crimson as she slammed both of her fists on the counter, leaning over into the stall to shout back at the elder girl. Whatever, you creepy old bat. How about you keep your ass back there and work on noodlin'?" Tayuya spat in distaste. Clearly angered by the girl's teasing, she didn't care that the brunette was only around 17, no woman liked to be called old. "Noodlin'," Naruto replied incredulously. Staring at the redhead with a barely contained smirk, his amused smile soon spread, and before long he was laughing loudly at Tayuya's expense, banging on the counter in an attempt to control himself. "That was the worst insult I've ever heard," he declared loudly between crazed laughter, only infuriating the hot-tempered Kunoichi sitting by his side. A deep frown made its way across her face, twitching with rage as she brought her trembling fist up into the air. "Yeah, well, if you don't shut your dumb ass mouth I'll be noodling you," she roared in an attempt to sound threatening, to her dismay though. Naruto found this even funnier, loosing himself as his laughter became too much, making him fall backwards from his bar stool to the unforgiving ground below, holding his ribs as they ached from his outburst. "Grr. Get your ass up, you rat. We're finished here so we can fucking leave. Got better stuff we could be doing than watching your stupid ass roll around in the dirt." Tayuya spat angrily, her annoyance clear in her words as the blonde righted himself, dusting off his outfit as he held his pained sides. He hadn't laughed like that in a long time. Right, whatever you say. Later, Ayame Ne-chan. We're outta here," he happily called into the stall, only to hear the waitress shout right back, peering out of the kitchen to meet his gaze as she did. Well, make sir. You bring Tayyu-chan along with you next time. I don't want to be a lonely Oba-san now to I. She merrily mocked with a fake hurt tone, going along with Tayuya's insult, much to the redhead's displeasure. It seemed like Tayuya would never stop growling. If Ayame hadn't served her, she would have thought there was a tiger on the loose in the village. Still, the angered Kunoichi couldn't help the SMALL smirk that began to dress her features. Tayuya realized she had felt so relaxed and carefree, Her mind had really forgotten about all her troubles or hardships. The redhead could see why her blonde caretaker frequented this cozy little stall. It was an amazing escape. She peered out into the distance of the street, squinting as she recognized something. Tayuya gave an evil smile as a certain pink-haired ninja walked towards their direction, though she was still too far to notice them. "Oi, asshole. It's cold as fuck out here, give me your jacket," Tayuya suddenly declared with a cunning smirk. She was clearly up to something but Naruto had no idea what. He looked at her in confusion. "What? Are you crazy? It's the middle of summer, it's gorgeous out here." He frowned in disbelief glancing up at the proud sun in the sky. The weather in Konoha today was lovely. The idea of being cold just simply didn't make sense to him. Maybe it was a girl thing. "Then you won't mind giving me your jacket, shithead," she angrily retorted. Of course she was feeling the heat of the sun bearing down on them, but the look on the pinket's face would definitely be worth it. Fine, whatever. I'm just glad someone is willing to wear it. You'd be surprised how many people don't think orange is a great color," he replied with a cheery smile. The redhead shot him a deadpan look but didn't comment. As she dressed herself in his surprisingly comfortable orange coat. As soon as Tayuya finished putting it on, she felt a slight flush of color wash over her cheeks at wearing his clothes. The fact that it smelled just like him really didn't help her senses. What alarmed her most was that she was enjoying the sensation. A gentle upwards curve had even made its way across her lips. Naruto felt his cheeks brighten also. He had to resist the urge to tell her just how adorable she looked wearing his jacket with that tiny delicate smile plastered on her porcelain face, doing his best to end off his embarrassment. He snapped to attention when she suddenly spoke. "And, don't think I'm going back in that fucking dumbass chair. If I wanted to watch a wheel spin all day I'd buy a goddamn hamster," she huffed in annoyance, opening up her arms towards Naruto, silently demanding that he carry her, though to onlookers it looked more like she was waiting to be hugged. The blonde happily obliged, picking her up in a piggyback fashion. He didn't really trust his voice to speak out against her right now. He feared he might stutter or stammer similar to Hinata as his cheeks continued to redden at Tayuya's new look. As he picked her up he was shocked to feel her once again cuddle into him, hugging him from behind. It may have been his imagination but he could have sworn he heard her let out a content sigh. The Uzumaki shook his head in disbelief. Maybe his time with Jiraiya was starting to affect his common sense when it came to women. Tayuya was glad she could hide her deeply crimson face in Naruto's back. She couldn't believe that she had even managed to produce such a girly-sounding noise as she instinctively cuddled into him while he carried her. "I can't fucking help it. It's nice, okay?" She roared inwardly as if arguing with herself over her own feelings. She felt like she needed to excuse her actions, as if someone was judging her for them. "Besides, what else can I do? I gotta get used to being carried this way, so I might as well fucking enjoy it." She continued to desperately reason with herself, though she couldn't fight off just how obviously fake her excuses sounded. She didn't have time to lose herself in such thoughts, however. "Alright, Pinky is comin' our way, see how she likes this," Tayuya thought evilly as Sakura approached them, after seeing the cherry blossom girl hug the blonde. The ex-sound Kunoichi would never admit it, but her distaste for the girl had skyrocketed. It seemed, however, that Sakura wasn't alone this time. An upbeat blonde-haired Kunoichi walked at her side. The two of them happily gossiping as they came closer to Naruto and herself. "Oh, Sakura-chan, what are you doing here?" Naruto chirped happily, the excitement clear in his voice. The innocent blonde couldn't help but rub the back of his neck sheepishly when Sakura gave him a gentle smile. "Hey Naruto, why are you wearing your jacket around your neck? It looks so silly," she greeted kindly, a giggle following up her reply as she hadn't seemed to notice Tayuya, who was hidden away. Snuggling into the Uzumaki's back, the redhead decided to make herself known. "Sup, Pinky," she spat casually. Marveling in the cherry blossom girl's momentary frown, Sakura managed to right herself, plastering a well-concealed fake smile across her features. "Good to see you, Tayuya. I hope your legs are feeling a little better. Tsunade-sama told me of your condition since I'm trying to be a medic ninja myself. If Naruto ever needs any extra help, don't be shy, I could use the experience." The happy-go-lucky Pinket offered merrily, a small glint of excitement in her eye. It seemed that she was taking her newfound ambition rather seriously. TCH, I'll try to remember that. The redhead snapped calmly. For some reason it lacked some of her usual venom as she glanced over Sakura's kind, caring expression. God. What the hell is wrong with these people? None of them can go 5 fucking minutes without trying to help someone. It's gross. Tayuya raged to herself, her brow furrowing in confusion as a pained look came about her. She realized that more than likely, she was the odd one out here. Maybe it's just me who's weird. What if it's just me that can't act that way? HMPH. Why do I fucking care anyways? The redhead huffed in self-confliction. She shoved the feelings aside and buried her head into the back of Naruto's neck, enjoying that surge of warmth that lit up her stomach that made everything feel better. Oi, Naruto. Aren't you going to introduce me? Ino Yamanaka questioned with a flick of her bangs, running her hand through it to remove it from her face. A look of recognition washed over Naruto. Ahaha, sorry Ino-chan. He started weakly, he never was good with manners and the sort. Tayuya-chan, this is Ino Yamanaka, she was in my class at the Ninja Academy. He declared cheerfully as if it was his best attempt. The blonde girl in question lit up with a cheeky smile, causing Sakura to immediately sigh. She knew where this was going. Well, I expected, the prettiest woman in all of Konoha, but I guess that will do tilde, she winked playfully. Causing Naruto's cheeks to become dusted with a light pink shade. The boy still wasn't used to positive attention. He had to admit it still made him a little nervous when he didn't know how to respond. Sakura clicked her tongue at her best friend's antics. Whatever Ino pig, I'm sure Naruto has better things to do than listen to you flatter yourself. The pinkett chuckled, enjoying her company, till she saw the redhead's arms pull her teammate closer to her, wrapping him up in a tighter embrace. Damn right he does. We gotta get this asshole into shape. He'll be kicking ass in no time. After I'm done with him you'll see. Tayuya declared proudly, puffing out her chest in an attempt to look like she held authority. To her delight, the blonde carrying her lit up with the biggest foxy grin she'd seen yet. Whoa, no way Tayuya-chan. Are you gonna help me train? He yelled happily, clearly not used to someone taking time to spend with him or help him unless he had begged them for their attention. She gave a small smirk. Though it looked more like a delicate, happy little smile, Tayuya insisted that it was definitely a badass all-knowing smirk. Damn right, if you have to look out for me, then you better be goddamn hard to kill. She roared with her usual attitude, though her caretaker merely chuckled merrily. The two Konoha kunoichi stared at the two of them in disbelief. Well, we better let you get to it then. Sakura interrupted awkwardly, stammering a little in surprise. For some reason, after her visit to Naruto's apartment, she didn't expect the two to be so close. It reminded her painfully of how Sasuke had been with Naruto, and seeing the blonde being cuddled so contently made her feel a strange twisting sensation in her stomach. Right. We better get going to right, Sakura. Ino quickly agreed, plotting an escape for the two of Leaf Kunoichi. Tayuya just shrugged her shoulders in a bored manner. She didn't really care about either of them. Naruto chuckled awkwardly, giving a small wave. Right. Well, it was nice to see you guys. We'll see YA around, he said with a genuine smile. Sakura couldn't help but notice just how happy he seemed, causing her brow to furrow a little. Something that surprised even herself. How can he be so happy? Sasuke-kun is still gone. Well, knowing Naruto, I bet he is also thinking about him. He never lets anyone see when he's upset. Oh, I know. Maybe it's cause he doesn't have to be on his own anymore. Yeah, that's it. For someone who's lived alone all his life, it must be really nice to have someone stay with him. Sakura nodded her head with satisfaction. It all made so much sense now, and the twisting feeling in her stomach subsided, allowing her to feel like her normal calm and cheery self again. Tayuya turned around. Hanging on to Naruto with just one arm wrapped around his neck, she leant back off him, waving to the Leaf Kunoichi with a cocky smirk. Bye-bye tilde, the redhead mocked as she left with her blonde caretaker. The way she was casually acting so arrogant had Sakura growling softly with annoyance. Even Ino seemed to be affected. Grr, who does she think she is? Oi forehead, are you really gonna let her go around snuggling up to your teammate like that? She's even wearing his jacket, and worst of all, she actually made it look good. Naruto's jacket. Ino yelled in disbelief, her annoyance getting the better of her as she ranted to Sakura. the two of them had started to make their way back to the Yamanaka flower store while they chatted. What do you mean, Ino? Naruto can be like that with whoever he wants, idiot. Did you see how happy he looked? It's kind of sweet, besides. She has broken legs, Ino pig, it's not like she wanted to be lifted around like that, have a little sympathy. Sakura shot back, hoping to explain things in a way that even Ino would understand. Sometimes it was difficult for the blonde to get something through her thick skull. Huh, I saw the way you looked all confused. You can't play innocent with me, forehead. Ino spat with a harmless glare. Bickering with Sakura had to be one of her favorite pastimes. HMPH. I was thinking about how Naruto was able to feel better about, well, you know. Sasuke-kun, but I guess it's cause, well, you know. Naruto had to live alone all his life, but now he has someone staying with him for a while. The Pinkett replied softly. Dancing around with her wording, she was going over a lot of delicate subjects here. Thankfully Ino gave her a solemn look of understanding and said no more about it, though she wasn't done teasing her pink-haired friend. Still, that doesn't explain why you looked like you wished you were the one being carried. The blonde happily chirped, tossing Sakura a teasing wink causing her to growl angrily. Shut it, Ino pig, there's no way I was thinking that. The cherry blossom glared with a light blush, causing her best friend to cackle at her, laughing in a mocking tone. Don't look at me like that, forehead. Just 'cause I have blonde hair and blue eyes doesn't mean I can fill in for your Naru-kun tilde, Ino said in a sing-song voice, clearly getting a rise out of her oldest friend, Sakura's fist raised with aggression. She looked about ready to murder a certain Yamanaka. When I'm done with you, you're gonna need carrying. She roared violently, causing Ino to squeal in terror, leaping to the nearest rooftop as the two began to jump around Konoha together. Tayuya slumped lazily backwards against the bark of the tree she was laying against. She'd been watching over Naruto for only a few minutes and she was already seeing his taijutsu was very obviously lacking. It seemed as if he had learned the style completely backwards. Every move, every strike, seemed to make his move ments 10 times harder to execute than they should have been. Though she was impressed by his speed and the force behind the blows, it even made her curious of just how much faster the blonde would be moving if he wasn't impaired. Man, you really suck, don't ya? The redhead commented without grace, causing the Uzumaki to growl at her in annoyance. He whipped around to face her with a deep frown as he rubbed his neck. TCH. I thought you said you were going to help me, not insult me. Naruto whined childishly, folding his arms across his stomach and pouting only made him look even more immature. I will, asshole. Listen, we need to go over all the katas for your taijutsu, except that there's no way I'd fucking know that style, so here's what we're gonna do. Now listen good, cause I'm only gonna explain this once. She quickly explained. Naruto seemed to buy it, leaning over slightly to focus on her words with the best of his ability. He had always been like this when anyone offered him their help. He'd give it his all and then some. I'm gonna tell you how you need to stand for the snake-style taijutsu that Orochimaru teaches, this way you'll know more about how the faggot Uchiha fights. If you ever run into him again, and since you have kinda came up with your own shit show version of taijutsu, we'll work on making it fluid, like an actual fighting style, otherwise it will just keep slowing you down. Tayuya calmly tutored, making the blonde look at her in a new appreciative light. He gave a cheery smile. Wow, Taiyu-chan, you never told me you were so smart. He happily complimented, causing his new sensei's cheeks to light up a similar shade to her hair. Then she, of course, growled angrily at him. Still, what do you mean it will keep slowing me down? This is how I was taught. HT in the academy, even if I did get a pretty bad grade, haha. The blonde questioned nervously. He had taken to his habit of scratching the back of his head sheepishly, trying to look as sincere as possible. Well, looks like either Konoha really fucking suck at taijutsu or some asshole was teaching you bad on purpose. Still, your taijutsu sucks. You'd be way better if you knew how to move properly. I'm surprised you can even fight without falling over yourself how you are right now. Tayuya lectured, somewhat enjoying her new authoritative role, the way Naruto was looking at her so attentively. Listening to her every word like it was the will of a god, it made her feel proud and empowered, and a little embarrassed, though she'd rather die than admit that. Well, some of the teachers at the academy really hated me. Naruto offered with a pained chuckle that was much too forced. The redhead flinched slightly. She saw the hurt on his face. Would it really make such a difference, Tayuya-chan? I really need to get stronger. He lit up once more, his face the picture of determination as he grinned down happily to his redhead partner in crime. Tayuya gave a sly smirk of her own. Damn right it will. Who do you think I am, asshole? Don't expect my training to be easy though. Orochimaru will be training Sasuke, and that fucking snake bastard has a lot of experience in making powerful ninja. That means we'll be using what you got as our advantage. The redhead puffed out her chest, making her look full of herself, yet Naruto had to admit she seemed to know what she was talking about. Though he wasn't exactly a good judge of that. What I've got? He asked with a puzzled expression. He had closed his eyes while scratching his head, seemingly deep in thought. He wasn't sure what his roommate was referring to. Damn right. We're gonna work your ass all day and night. Orochimaru told us all you got crazy fox demon stamina, and since you got no missions, you got plenty of time. Don't expect some lame ass workout for a couple hours. If you got as much a stamina as that snake bastard seemed to think you do, then we'll be trainin' as soon as we've finished breakfast till you can barely get us home. Tayuya smirked with excitement. She was going to take this blonde knucklehead to a whole new level, and it would give her something to kill all of her time as well as ignore the worries of her new lifestyle. A wash of determination spread over Naruto. He gave the kunoichi a fierce nod of agreement. Right. I'll do my best, Tayuya-chan. I never give up, that's a promise. If you're gonna do your best with all this awesome teaching, then I'll just have to try twice as hard to make you proud. He declared with a foxy grin and a really lame thumbs-up gesture, causing the redhead to snigger at his expense. Still, she couldn't help but want to explode with all these happy, warm feelings she'd been experiencing lately. I'm not gonna fucking deny it. I'm not dumb. This stuff, being normal, being accepted, treated kindly, she thought to herself, then took a glance up at the blonde who was contently smiling at her. Seeing someone smile because of me, just for me, it all makes me feel so special. She let her small delicate smile tug at her lips. It was barely even noticeable, she imagined, when she saw Naruto's smile turn into an overly large foxy grin. She knew he could see her smiling, but the redhead couldn't bring herself to care. Damn right, asshole. If I'm gonna be stuck living with you, then you gotta be able to look out for the both of us. She deck. Lared with ambition, only to receive another fierce nod and a right from the gentle blonde. The kunoichi had already thought of multiple training methods for her new student. With her intelligence, she was able to keep up with Shikamaru. Which, unfortunately for Naruto, meant she knew exactly how to work him into the ground. The two sat in one of Konoha's most popular training grounds. She had insisted on going somewhere quieter, but Naruto wouldn't budge. He had told her that he enjoyed running into his friends and being able to take a break along with them before he not so quietly announced that he also liked to spy on their training to get ideas for his own. Tayuya smirked evilly, promising the blonde that next time they train he would want a training ground as private as possible, so no one could see him suffer. The blonde suppressed a shudder at that, but the two worked on going over every single taijutsu stance they could. Time seemed to race by. Hours upon hours passed, and soon day had went from early noon to around 6 p.m., the redhead estimated, due to the sun's setting position in the horizon. Most of the shinobi that had been using the colossal training grounds had all packed up and left, leaving only a few dedicated members here and there, working through the orange glow of midday. Tayuya had to admit it was beautiful. It was the kind of serenity that made a person appreciate everything they had. The well-cut grass below her, the surrounding proud trees that filled the air with a scent of earth and soil, and the gentle lazy summer sun that melted across the sky, painting in a soothing orange color. Already Naruto was showing drastic signs of improvement. Of course he was nowhere close to correcting his movements and fixing his taijutsu in just one day. That would be absurd. He did, however, pick up the basics of each stance, which allowed him to see the flaws in his own movements. The fluid and graceful snake-style movements were much too delicate for the blonde, causing him to mix up his style with the new one Tayuya had shown him. This equaled in him have a style that was nimble, based around speed and evasion, but instead of needing to be accurate and graceful, the moves had been replaced with his usual style with some modifications. Instead of simply throwing his punches and kicks hoping to destroy any resistance like he normally did, his moves now contained firm, pronounced strikes that struck with purpose. A lot of the new style worked around using the evasive snake style to dodge blows and continue that momentum to power up his brash, cannon-like strikes. Now his punches and kicks looked like they had a certain stiffness to them, another of Tayuya's genius ideas. She had told him to use what he had learned when walking trees and then apply small amounts to the limb that was being used to strike. For a kick, empowering his legs meant he could move faster, flow with the movement better, become more fluid, but he could also force chakra into his foot. Meaning if his enemy was going to block or parry, then the impact would be much sharper, meaning it would become increasingly difficult for his opponent to continuously defend, not only that, but if Naruto's control on Kyuubi slipped and he used the demon chakra, it would most likely burn his enemy too. You got plenty of chakra, so you don't gotta worry about pissin' it away on taijutsu. Hell, you probably can't even feel the drain. Tayuya had vehemently told him while they developed the style. Naruto only beamed happily at her as his new movements felt swifter and more deadly. He knew it was just the start, but that only made him even more excited. After removing his stunted, sabotaged academy-style taijutsu, Naruto could already feel that moving around in taijutsu forms felt much less strained. He wondered if he would be able to keep up with Lee after he had really started to master his forms. We gotta name it, Naruto cheerfully declared at the smirking redhead. Shish. He was happy that he listened to her so devoutly, it made her feel important, a feeling she could really start to enjoy. TCH, it's just kicking and punching, asshole. Why you gotta make things more complicated than they have to be? Tayuya scoffed at his childish antics, though she didn't really mind. He was working hard, so she couldn't really complain. It was always nice to see the excitement in a pupil. I know. It's like, really tough and firm, but it's also still like that other snake style. We should call it the solid snake. Naruto declared with enthusiasm that only caused the kunoichi to roll her eyes. Though for some reason it felt like she'd become alarmed or that there was in over her head, she shook off the peculiar feeling and sighed heavily. Konoha must be having a weird effect on her. Oi, Naruto, a brunette announced loudly while waving a hand high into the air, slowly walking over with a small white puppy yipping happily by the side of his feet, its tail wagging enthusiastically as they made their way over to the blonde. Kiba, what are you doing here? Naruto smiled happily. He was glad to see that his friend had recovered from the mission to retrieve Sasuke. A lot of his close friends had suffered in their attempt to bring back the Raven. The Sound 4 had been no pushover, especially when Kimimaro had shown up and made it 5. At some points it looked like a few of them would never make it. Choji, Kiba, even Neji, were on the brink of death when they returned to Konoha. Hey, you know me. It takes more than that to keep us down, right, Akamaru? Kiba bellowed obnoxiously, leaving the white puppy to happily bark in agreement while running around Naruto's legs, pestering the blonde for his attention. Naruto laughed while petting the small nin dog. He had always loved being around animals. It was such a calming feeling, well, except for Orochimaru's snakes in the Forest of Death, that was anything but calming. Glad to see you're back on your feet. Naruto chirped merrily, looking over to his dog boy friend who was now grinning with pride, letting out a heh while shrugging his shoulders. You know how it is. Me and Akamaru just came out here to get back into our training. Hokage-sama told us we needed to take it easy before we can go back to our team training, but we'll be ready in no time. Kiba declared with a smirk as Akamaru once again chimed in with his own happy barks. All was going well until the Inuzuka stiffened completely, looking like a wooden board. Kiba, what's wrong? Naruto stared with curiosity. It looked like the dog boy had seen a ghost or worse. An enemy. Kiba let out a low growl, and in an instant Akamaru was by his side snarling too. What is she doing here? She was one of the Sound 4. Naruto. Iba angrily demanded an explanation, causing Tayuya's face to fall somewhat. She had really been enjoying her day with the blonde. All of her troubles, her past and everything else had seemed to have been washed away with the sunset. This, however, was a painful reminder that she'd never escape who she was. Naruto's frown decorated his face. He noticed the redhead's expression and immediately became defensive. TCH. That doesn't matter anymore, that's not who she is now. Granny Tsunade personally gave me the mission to take care of her, and that's what I'm gonna do. Naruto declared, clenching his fists. He didn't care what people said. Tayuya was his friend. she had helped him more today than most people had in a lifetime. Ah, sorry. I didn't realize that she was given to you as a mission, that makes more sense. Kiba's face softened once more and he offered an apologetic smile to the blonde who only seemed to grow angrier. Much to the dog boy's confusion, he tilted his head to the side questioningly. She not just a. Naruto yelled adamantly but was swiftly cut off by the kunoichi in question. That's right, I am a mission. And this mission is fucking busy, so why don't you take your puny little mutt and get the fuck outta here? Tayuya roared aggressively, her frown was deeply rooted across her face. If looks could kill, her glare would have put Kiba 6 feet under by now. Grr. Akamaru's no mutt. He's the best nin dog around. You'll see he'll get huge, so you better watch what you say. Right, Akamaru. Kiba defended in annoyance, he could take it when people ensue. LTED him, but when they insulted his partner it made his blood boil. Tayuya merely smirked. I thought I told you to get outta here. You're obviously the bitch of your dog clan, so you should be used to taking orders. The redhead spat with venom. She was sick of this already. She hated that this had ruined her mood, reminded her of who she was, or who she used to be. I'm not like that anymore. I won't be like that. I just want to be happy. She thought to herself, somewhat saddened by the turn of events. She just wanted to escape her past. TCH. There's no way a man like me would take orders from a woman like you. Kiba snarled, clearly annoyed. He couldn't believe that this girl was even alive, never mind in his village. A fear of deep dread and regret fell upon him as his nose picked up a very familiar scent behind him. Oh tilde. And what is wrong with following orders from a woman? Sume Inuzuka questioned with a hard, cold edge to her tone. Kiba gulped while Akamaru pressed his head against the ground, his ears flopping downwards in fear. Ah, ha, ha ha. Ka-chan, it's not what it sounds like. Kiba offered bravely. His mother always did terrify him, she was the pack leader. And right now he really did feel like the bitch of the clan, ready to take orders while running with his tail between his legs. Well, you're clearly having problems because of your masculine behavior, maybe we should get you neutered. That ought to fix it. Sume growled out a threat, causing Kiba to pale considerably. Ha. No, I can follow orders from women. See, let's leave. CYA Naruto. I'd love to stay and talk about your training, but the family jewels are on the line. He quickly spat out before running from the training ground. His mother merely scoffed, walking away with Akamaru in her arms, not bothering to even say goodbye as she left Naruto and Tayuya. HMPH, bout fucking time. Tayuya hissed with anger. She fell quiet afterwards, glaring at the ground with a twisted expression upon her face. Naruto could tell she was hurt, pained even. He knew that expression too well. He would wear it himself whenever the villagers would attack him when he was younger. Silently he went to her side, slumping down next to her, his arm brushing against hers as he slipped quietly down the bark to sit with her. She looked at him with questioning eyes, not fully understanding what the blonde's intentions were. Naruto stretched out his legs, laying them over one another as he sat comfortably in silence with his roommate as she studied him. He offered a caring, warm smile, though it did little to make her feel any better. Without thinking any further, Naruto gathered his courage and decided to comfort her. Wordlessly, he stroked his right hand through the back of her gorgeous crims. Onlocks then gently guided her head down onto his lap. She was surprised, confused, and really didn't know what was happening, so she just accepted the warm feeling that came with him playing with her hair. She rolled over slightly onto her back so she could see him. Her chocolate orbs looked straight past him, looking into the bed of leaves above them that offered them shade. The redhead saw the shade dancing over her face, the leaf-like pattern being followed thanks to the retreating sun's rays. The saddened kunoichi peered up through the leaves to look at the soothing golden sunset. While she could feel him delicately running his fingertips through her hair, combing it with them softly. Tayuya knew she should object to this kind of thing. She knew she should snap up and curse at him for treating her this way. Yet she felt so weak. The warmth that filled her with a comforting embrace, the calming smile that he looked down at her with that she could see from the corner of her eye. How happy and grateful he looked. They were so at peace together, just like yesterday night. I'm glad you're here, Tayuya-chan. It really makes me happy. He admitted honestly, his smile only widening as a hint of pink brushed over his cheeks. He wasn't embarrassed though, he just wanted her to know what he thought. She was not just submission to him, she was much, much more. Tayuya was his friend, but sometimes he wondered that if he kept enjoying her company so much, that she might just become much, much more than just some friend to him. The redhead blushed furiously at his simple confession. Her face became crimson and heated. She felt tears attempting to form in her eyes at her embarrassment, yet she held them back desperately. Tayuya wanted to tell him, the kunoichi desperately wanted to let him know. I'm glad you're here too, here for me, she thought to herself as her eyes danced over his soft, warm smile, though she quickly buckled under the pressure and all she could spit out was, "Shut up, idiot." To her surprise he chuckled peacefully, a gentle look falling over his features as they watched the Konoha sun set together. She was the best mission he'd ever been given. HNGG. T Taiyu-chan. Can barely even move. Naruto desperately struggled to shift his body as he attempted to walk. The boy had been decorated with weight seals that were each set to 20 kilograms, one on each arm, each leg, and a final one on his chest. Hey asshole, I told you I ain't gonna make this shit easy. Quit winnin' and get movin', you're ussin' all your energy on your mouth. Tayuya ordered with a proud smirk. When she was done with the blonde he was going to be a literal killing machine. For now though, it was fun to see him struggle. Easy for you to say. All you gotta do is hang on to my back. The Uzumaki shot back angrily with a huff as he managed to take a few more exaggerated steps. He'd never even trained with weights before. To make matters worse, Tayuya insisted that she be carried also, adding even more weight. HMPH. I'm helping too, I have weights on too, you know, or did you think I was always this heavy shit for brains? Naruto instantly snapped his head around to look at her with shock. He hadn't been told about this. What do you mean you have weights on too? You're going to kill me. Naruto whined sadly, yet Tayuya merely crossed her arms over her chest with a look of defiance. An evil glint in her eyes as she looked down at the blonde who was struggling to move. She could be manipulative after all. Ah well, I should have known an asshole like you couldn't handle my training. Guess it's to be expected after all. She shrugged her shoulders as if she was uncaring, making a few of her crimson locks fall down over her chest. Here I was thinking we'd make you strong. Guess you just don't got what it takes, asshole. Well, let's give up, we might as well just go get some ramen instead. The redhead acted innocently, as if she had truly tried her best in training the blonde. She watched with a barely hidden smile as confusion fell upon his features. He stopped walking to concentrate on thinking. In its own way it was rather endearing, not that she'd ever admit that. No, I can do it, Tayyu-chan. I'm just not used to it yet, that's all, you'll see. I never give up. He was quick to backpedal, childishly making Tayuya grateful that he'd turned around again to attempt to walk further and show off his determination, as she had to grit her teeth with a smile just to bite back her laughter. Man, that was way too easy, even for him. Her smile instantly subsided as she thought that. Tayuya stole a glance down at the messy blonde locks of her caretaker who was now struggling onwards. A frown dressed her porcelain features. He's never had anyone help him before. Nah, there's no way that's right. Everyone around here knows him. Hey, I bet he was practically dragged up by everyone else. Tayuya considered solemnly before correcting herself. After all, Naruto was the nicest person she'd ever met. He was so nice that even she couldn't force herself to be cruel to him. Well, not all of the time anyway. See, I can do it, Naruto called out happily. Snapping her out of her thoughts to look down at him with a knowing smirk, he shot her that cheeky smile that caused a warmth in her stomach to rise up through her body. A feeling Tayuya had really grown to appreciate, but she didn't think on it. Yeah, I'll be impressed when we're done, asshole. Till then you got plenty of work to do. The redhead, motivated, as the blonde began to walk much more smoothly. It was even surprising him just how quickly he was adapting to it. Tayuya looked down at him, feeling a little guilty for not explaining why he'd loaded him up with a crushing amount of weight, yet she figured he didn't have to understand as long as it worked. It's almost hard to believe, but it looks like that snake bastard was right. His healing from that fox is insane. Right now, his muscles are tearing and repairing themselves in an attempt to deal with the strain. It's forcing accelerated growth into his body. Man, I'm such a fucking genius, ain't I? Tayuya summarized his training while becoming rather proud of herself. She was well versed in most medical procedures from that silver-haired creep Kabuto. He loved to run his mouth, explaining every little detail of the body and how it worked as he healed them through their harsh training methods. Jirobo was trained in a similar way to her blonde caretaker. Kabuto was always seen to fix up the much larger boy, and even then he didn't adapt anywhere close to this rate. Tayuya glanced down at Naruto's back. She had to admit, it was almost frightening. "So you think this is gonna make me strong, Tayyu-chan?" Naruto yelled merrily while now walking rather casually. The redhead looked down at him with almost wide eyes. Even with his healing factor, she didn't expect anything of this level. "Are you crazy? Of course it's gonna make you strong, asshole. You're carrying around 150 kilos. Most people would be crushed right now. I told you, didn't I? We makin' use of what you got. And what you got is a big bad fox that's fixin' up your muscles as we speak." Tayuya explained angrily, though as if apologizing. She wiggled a little closer to him, holding a little tighter as he continued to walk with her. She was still adjusting to Konoha, and sometimes it was still difficult to keep her temper in check even over small issues. I guess," Naruto replied a little sadly. He'd never really liked relying on the fox for anything. He wanted to do everything he could using his own power, not anyone else's. To him that was kinda like cheating. Tayuya was helping him to the best of her ability, and he trusted her intelligence, so decided to keep quiet with his complaints. It was honestly nice for the blonde to have someone that was paying attention to him, concentrating on making him the best he could be. Even Jiraiya had simply given him a task and then went away to do his own thing, even if he had enjoyed the time spent with the Sannin. "Tch. Don't go gettin' all soppy, you loser. Get movin'. If you do a good job I'll even let you start training ninjutsu later." Tayuya quickly muttered. As tough as she acted, the redhead knew this must have been agony for the blonde. She was going to make him train ninjutsu anyways, but it didn't hurt to let him think she was being nice. She could practically feel Naruto beam with excitement from under her. He even strangely seemed to get a little warmer, which confused her slightly. "What? You mean it? This is nothing, you'll see, no sweat at all." With that, the blonde immediately broke into a run. The pain it caused him making him feel as if his body had just shattered like glass, but he didn't let that stop him even for a second. Instantly the relief of his chakra tending to his ruined muscles washed over him and allowed him to keep his pace, jogging down the outskirts of Konoha as if he wasn't weighted at all. Well, if it's so easy I guess I'd better increase the weight to 250 already." Tayuya mocked evilly, causing the blonde to cough miserably while he continued to jog down the muddy path that went down by the river. Naruto glanced down sadly at the small pier. This was where Sasuke always sat. He frowned deeply and newfound determination washed over him. The blonde sped up even further into a full-force sprint. "Whoa. Hey. What the hell are you doing, asshole?" Tayuya shrieked in surprise as she latched onto the blonde with all her strength, desperately trying to hold on. To her surprise, Naruto simply kept going, rocketing down the countryside path with perfect running form, sweat drenching him as he worked in overdrive. The redhead felt a huge amount of pride swell in her chest as happiness washed over her. A bright smile fell across her face. "Thata, boy Foxy. Let's get this asshole workin' hard. Go, go, go," she ordered like a happy drill sergeant as the blonde barreled down the road with determination. In all honesty, Tayuya was why going to make him do this until the end of the road? She'd only expected him to be able to walk it. Now though, the blonde raced around a corner, running straight onwards as if planning to do a lap around all of Konoha. Still, she sure as hell was gonna stop him. This was awesome. "Tayyu-chan," he called to her as he raced down the new road. It ran alongside the great walls of Konoha. She watched buildings and segments of the wall continued to blur by as she looked down to him, marveling in the fact that he was able to talk at all while under this pressure. "Don't go easy on me. I have to get stronger no matter what." Naruto quickly spoke through his pain while he kept running. His muscles were screaming at him to stop, but he simply silenced them with his soothing chakra, acting almost like a sedative. He could feel it. It was getting easier and easier by the second. All he had to do was keep forcing himself forward. "Hey, who the hell do you think I am? I ain't no pussy like the rest of you tree huggers. You'll do my trainin' or die tryin', you hear me, asshole?" she yelled while puffing out her chest. Maybe this whole training instructor thing was going to her head, but the blonde De seemed to be enjoying himself just as much as she was, so it was fine in her mind. With a evil smirk she tightened her grip on his shoulders, shaking him around a bit. I don't hear you answerin' me, blondie, she yelled out in mock anger. Naruto happily spat out a yeah of agreement as he continued to work hard. Somehow, Tayuya's strange motivating tactics were actually helping. The feeling of her body on his back as well as her gentle breath against his neck, they were all reminders that someone was actually here for him. I won't let you down, Tayyu-chan. We'll get stronger together. I promise. Naruto thought with fire in his eyes. There was no stopping him now, this was nothing. Tayyu-chan, I think I'm dying. Naruto whined tiredly as he marched through Konoha. Sadly, he looked a mess. His blonde locks were soaked from his effort. He was even walking with over-exaggerated, tired steps that looked as if he was going to collapse at any given moment. TCH. Well, that's your own stupid fault, idiot. How was I supposed to know you were gonna run around Konoha 10 times? The hell's wrong with you? She spat back in mock anger, lightly bopping him upside the head with her fist, causing him to groan even further. It's not my fault. It was spur of the moment. He whimpered childishly, causing the redhead to growl in an irritated manner. She was actually surprised the blonde could even move at all, never mind carry her around with the weight still on. TCH, fine, I'll deactivate the seals for now, such a baby. Tayuya rolled her eyes dismissively. It's not like she could give him the satisfaction that he'd far surpassed her expectations. Then she looked down at his sweat-covered body. His muscles seemed to quiver in pain every time he took a step. Tayuya closed her eyes, and in a move that shocked herself, she leaned into his neck, cuddling him tight, and whispered into his ear. You did really good, asshole. She moved to cover her blushing face into the blonde's neck. Stuff like this was getting a little easier for her, but not by much. She still had to fight down the urge to snap up and tell him she could kill him like a fly on the wall. Bad habits were hard to get rid of after all. Naruto, on the other hand, simply stopped moving, stood frozen in the street, his mouth slightly agape. His face matched Tayuya's hair as he blushed like a tomato. No one had ever really given him much praise, especially not in such an affectionate way. He didn't dare tell her, but the way she whispered into his ear had made a shiver run down his spine and cause a hitch in his breath. He shook his head, snapping back to reality as he heard a happy huff from his redhead partner in crime. Clearly she was pleased with his dumbfounded expression, which only served to embarrass him further. He smirked knowingly. Well, it's much easier to work hard with a beautiful girl on your back to impress. With that, Naruto walked onwards with his head held up high and seemed to carry himself with more grace. Tayuya, on the other hand, was practically melting his skin on the back of his neck from the sheer heat her face was emitting. God, I hate you so much, asshole. She muttered softly into the back of his neck as her arms snaked further around him, holding him tight. He just chuckled in that carefree tone that only he seemed to manage. It made her feel so safe for some reason, like she'd never have to worry about anything ever again. Then cold, hard reality decided to rear its ugly head. She heard children muttering in the nearby alleyways, glaring dangerously at the blonde. Some of the merchants of the busy street seemed to share the sentiment, looking at her caretaker as if he was a danger to all of them. Luckily there were some smiling faces that met the blonde with a cheery wave, to which he gratefully nodded in return, but that only confused Tayuya even more. Just what was going on around here? Get her! Get her! Get the fox demon's girlfriend! One of the small children yelled from the alleyways. His arms loaded with tomatoes, 2 boys were at his side, were just as well armed. Yeah, let's get her! They yelled out in unison and were quick to hurl their projectiles her way. Tayuya frowned in confusion. Her frown immediately deepened to dangerous levels as she felt the tomato hit the back of her skull. The redhead's grip on Naruto tightened around him painfully, yet the young boys didn't stop. It seemed they had brought along a full basket of the red squishy weapons with them. Her head whipped around to face the little terrors, her vein pulsing in her forehead as rage washed over her features. Her hair was soaked with tomato and felt absolutely ruined. She was sure she looked a mess thanks to the little brats. You better scram, you little shits, or I'll rip off your arms and beat you with them. She yelled aggressively. Her eyes widened as horror fell across their little faces. Tayuya instantly whipped around to see the blonde looking up at her, his mouth slightly agape. His brows raised in surprise. His face seemed to fall as he saw her dressed in the tomatoes, yet Tayuya thought he was disappointed in her. She clenched her fists. Why was that look so painful to her? The kunoichi threw away her pride. She didn't care anymore. Whatever it was she had to do, she just didn't want to see that awful hurt look on his face. It made her stomach twist painfully and sink down sadly. She started, but to her surprise she was quickly interrupted by the blonde, turning to the alleyway, animatedly raising his fist in the air, waving them towards the alleyway. "Yeah, you little brats. When I get my hands on you, you're dead," he roared, doing his best to mimic Tayuya. Though his threats were rather weak in comparison, he raced off despite his screaming muscles, rocketing down the alleyways, leaving Tayuya still staring at him in shock from his back. They quickly caught up to the three little ones that had accidentally lost their way in the alleyways. They backed up, clearly terrified by what they known as the demon fox boy. To their horror, their backs met the cold, unforgiving wall behind them. It was a dead end. "Pete, please don't kill us." "Oh." Nay of them shouted out desperately while on the verge of tears. Tayuya smirked at that, ready to give them a piece of her mind, but before she could, Naruto crouched down to the young boy's level with the biggest, most gentle foxy grin she'd seen from him yet. Just the sight of it made her want to smile. Still she rounded back to the children, clearly intent on ripping them a new one, though again the blonde beat her to the punch. Hey, give us some of these." Naruto smiled happily, his face warming and carefree as he took a few of the tomatoes, even handing some back to Tayuya, who took the silently, even though she was far beyond confused. The children still looked about ready to cry until Naruto yelled out to them once again. "You got 15 seconds. Then we're gonna getcha. Better run." He waved at the boys happily, who immediately armed themselves with their tomatoes with a grin, then rocketed past the two teens in an attempt to flee, rushing straight out of the alleyways and straight into the main streets of Konoha. 15. Time's up. Naruto yelled out and sprinted out of the alleyways as fast as he could. Granted that this wasn't fast at all due to his exhaustion, Tayuya was still wordless, but gave a knowing smirk, readying her tomato. "Let's get the little brats," she roared as Naruto nodded in agreement while racing down the main streets of Konoha. The children Saint have rushed off to get their friends, as now there was around 8 of the little terrors. They all ran around happily while hurling their tomatoes with awful aim, the shots going wide while Naruto pretended that he needed to desperately dodge, which managed to make Tayuya grin. They chased after the little ones with a greatly slowed speed, giving them a chance at least. The redhead had to admit, she even made most of her shots miss on purpose. "Ha! Take that, ya lil shit," she roared smugly while dodging a rather well-aimed tomato. She ducked under it and nailed another kid with one of her OWN blood-red projectiles, leaving him splattered in tomato juice. She laughed heartily as the small boy blinked in confusion and shook his head from the wet substance. "Ha ha! Who's next? Come get some." Tayuya bellowed happily while Naruto continued to miss his mark. Feeling too sorry the kids that had to face his roommate in combat, he ran around after them as they giggled and laughed merrily, mocking a genuine smile, bless his own features. After around 30 minutes of playing around with them, Tayuya had one by one splattered them with tomatoes. She even puffed out her chest proudly at her victims as they all gathered around her and Naruto, admitting defeat to the much superior teens. "Ha! That's right, brats, that's what you get for messing with real ninja." She crossed her arms, losing herself in the moment. They giggled happily and seemed to surround her and Naruto. "Man, Nei-chan is so awesome. She's so strong. Naruto-kun is so fast. We couldn't hit him even once, even with Nei-chan on his back. He's really tough too. He saved the village from the evil ninja. Mama told me, but I didn't believe it at first." They all cheered and fussed over the two teens, who quickly became awkward despite their joyful, smiling faces. The children just grinned up at them happily. "You gotta play with us again some other time," one child yelled, which caused an uproar among the small kids. They broke into a chorus of, "Yeah," which only caused Naruto to break out into a hearty laugh. "Hey, come back when you're stronger. You're no match for the two of us," he roared, folding his arms across his chest in a somewhat cool manner. Tayuya managed to do the same, even though it was somewhat embarrassing. She was enjoying being in the spotlight for the little ones. "So cool. When I grow up I wanna just like you, Naruto," a small boy yelled, though a little girl quickly shoved him aside to stand at the front of the group. "No way, I wanna be just like Nei-chan. She's the best kunoichi there is." She yelled up to the redhead with star-struck eyes, causing the X-sound ninja to blush a little at the praise. Luckily Naruto managed to save her though. Hey, well, no time to waste. Being a ninja ain't easy, ya know. You've always gotta do your best to get strong and defend all the people you care about. Naruto gained a distant look on his features as he happily glanced around the village. When you guys grow up, it'll be up to you to keep this place safe. So do your best and always take care of the ones you love, they're what really make us strong. He explained with happy smirk. A foxy grin painted on his features, and the firm but caring way he spoke seemed to inspire the small army that had surrounded them. They looked at him with star-struck eyes. With that he let out a, "Hey! Let's go, Tayuya-chan." He yelled out merrily, and the small boys and girls called out goodbyes to them as the blonde leapt away from the scene, racing across the rooftops towards his apartment. "Where you goin', asshole? It's still early, or did you forget we started at 6 a.m.? There's no way you're getting off that easy, it's only around 9. Tayuya muttered into his ear as she held onto him tightly, not wanting to fall from his back as he jumped quickly from roof to roof. To her surprise though, he turned his face towards hers. "We're taking a break, better get cleaned up," he stated in a broken tone. Gone was the happy-go-lucky blonde, and the sheer loneliness in his voice haunted her being. Was this really the same Naruto from 5 minutes ago? What had happened to all that energy? "Asshole," she questioned softly, but he simply shook his head solemnly. She frowned a little sadly but huffed when remembering what they'd just done for the last half an hour or so. Her grip once again tight and around him as she let her face tickle into his neck. He said nothing, but she knew he could feel her actions. A small innocent smile was lighting up her face. I haven't really had fun like that ever since I can remember," she admitted with a melancholy hint to her words. The redhead didn't even want to consider thinking about her past, so she left it at that, though the blonde didn't seem to budge at all, much to her disappointment. The silence drifted on for a few more seconds, though for Tayuya it felt like forever. They landed silently on a nearby rooftop, and Naruto stopped stock still, confusing the redhead even more. "I didn't think you'd be so good with children. And your laugh makes me wanna laugh too. It's really cute in a way I can't explain. Seeing you happy is just the best feeling," he replied honestly in a bittersweet tone. He didn't even give her the chance to react as he set off again, jumping for a particularly far rooftop, making her focus on holding on rather than replying. "Goddamn loser. Who does he think he is?" Tayuya raged inwardly as her face became washed with a deep shade of red. A tear slid down her cheek, instantly making her go wide-eyed in surprise. "TCH. What the fuck? Why am I crying?" she roared inside her mind, feeling completely at war with herself as she quickly wiped her face into Naruto's t-shirt, still not sure why she was crying in the first place. Though the blonde's words seemed to echo in her mind. "Seeing you happy is just the best feeling." She let out a low growl but couldn't peel the small delicate smile from her face. Tayuya really hated feeling so vulnerable and weak like this. She felt like so far she had been clutching, hugging her, generally doing too much to embrace the surge of warmth that she got from such actions with her blonde caretaker. Yet it was difficult to resist, almost like a genjutsu. Still, the kunoichi realized the blonde remained uncharacteristically quiet. Tayuya wondered just exactly what was going through his mind right now, and started to realize perhaps she wasn't the only one who had a complicated list of issues. The sound of their apartment door creaking open snapped her back to reality. Something she was almost grateful for as the blonde closed the door behind them. She could practically feel the tension rolling off him. It was almost starting to make her a little uncomfortable. He grabbed one of the black, comfortable kitchen chairs that sat either side of his small wooden dining table. Much to her confusion, then he took it with him into the bathroom. Tayuya looked down at the chair, completely puzzled. Noting that it was the perfect height to lean up against the sink, it seemed oddly convenient for something, but she couldn't exactly think of what. "Whoa, what are you doing, asshole?" she yelped in confusion as he peeled her from his back and gently set her down in the chair. She looked up at him with a deep frown, but his stoic, sad-looking features made her waver. "We should get cleaned up and stuff. I'm gonna help," the blonde offered quietly while pulling down the shower head from his wall over the bath. His apartment combined bath and shower, meaning he LD choose which he'd like, but both worked through the bath's taps. Naruto turned on the water, sprinkling it into the bath as he ran his hand through it, testing its temperature, with a focused soft SM. He turned back to the confused redhead. Head back, he stated, doing his best to offer a tiny smile. Tayuya realized where he was going with this and decided to obey. For some reason, she just did. Didn't feel like arguing with that solemn tone. The redhead had a feeling it would probably lead to silence between them. It's probably best to close your eyes cause of the water, Naruto instructed with that same saddening voice. She nodded gently and done as she was told, not questioning him, in a surprising amount of trust that almost made him smile. Tayuya gasped softly as the warm water met her forehead. It cascaded down her proud crimson locks that now curled up within the sink behind her. She could feel his fingers delicately dancing through her tangled mane, stopping every so often to help remove a particularly stubborn piece of tomato that had managed to lodge itself in her fiery hair. After a few moments of the soothing head massage, she felt a new substance fall onto her head. It was thicker. She soon realized he was adding shampoo. With a smirk, she decided to try teasing him. Hey, well, if you ever decide to give up being a ninja, at least you can work in hair care, asshole. She didn't speak as loudly as usual. It was softer and her tone was filled with a hint of concern. The blonde managed to huff happily, much to her pleasure. The gesture left a smile plastered on her face. I'm just sorry that this happened. Because of me, Naruto finally admitted, causing the redhead to snap open her chocolate eyes to study him. His tone was pained and held an anger to it. She didn't say anything but eyed him carefully, patiently waiting for him to continue. Naruto continued to massage the shampoo into her softening wet locks, using his thumbs and fingers to work it into her scalp. He started from the top of her head, working his way slowly downwards as her hair became a sudsy white as he covered it in bubbles. He noticed that she let out a few relaxed sighs and had even closed her eyes again. He took his chance to speak again while she wasn't looking at him. For some reason, under her caring gaze, it was difficult to say anything at all. They targeted you for something because of me. People have started to accept me, but Naruto stopped for a moment as if trying to choose the correct wording for what he wished to say. Some people still think I'm the Kyuubi, and because of that. The Uzumaki grit his teeth as he delicately scrubbed Tayuya's hair clean of any mess. A deep frown was written on his face, so much so that it crinkled his nose and forced his eyes to squint. They did something bad to you to get to me. This time it was just something stupid, but next time it might not be so forgivable. Naruto felt his chakra bubbling evilly. A faint red started to surround him. He pictured it. Someone hurting Tayuya because of him. He just couldn't bear it. Just the thought makes me feel so angry. I never want anything bad to happen to you, he shouted with passion in his voice. Tayuya slowly opened her hazel eyes. They danced over the determined blonde in front of her for a moment before she surprised him, grabbing him softly with both hands clutching at the back of his hair. Slowly, the redhead pulled him down, guiding him into her neck. She didn't even have to think about what she was doing. It just felt like the natural thing to do, so she did it. She held him close to her, just messing with his blonde locks, combing through it with her long slender, musician's fingers, stroking it with care as her fingertips gently scratched against his head, causing a feeling he'd never forget. Naruto could practically hear his heart beating in his ears as his pulse quickened from her actions. Sure, they had been close before, but nothing like this. This had no justification like their shared bed or the times that he carried her. He leant into her further, his breath hitching as the two of them took a moment to register the positive sense of touch. The two of them both unused to friendly contact. You won't let anything happen to me, I know it, she muttered softly, full of confidence as she simply held him against her awkwardly. The redhead flinched as she felt him strongly wrap his arms around waist and cuddled into her while holding her in his embrace. Besides, we got him in the end, right? She whispered in a manner she hoped was soothing. The blonde said nothing, but he held her a little tighter. Tayuya knew she was blushing, but she really didn't care at all. He needed her right now, just like she had been needing him. It really was the most fun I've had in years. It just reminded me of being a kid, you know. I've never had that chance in forever. Hell, before coming here I don't even remember smiling. All I thought about was if I was gonna die or not. I had to be strong just to make sure that I could survive. Tayuya forced herself to open up a little, knowing that the blonde was far more likely to explain about himself if she went first. Even if her voice had quivered in a way that made her feel weak, even if she had to bite back the tears that threatened to form in her eyes, even if she held him against her tight. just to remind herself that everything was okay. Naruto pulled back away from her to look her in the eyes. His innocent sapphire orbs challenged her nervous chocolate spheres as they danced, both attempting to study each other. Naruto raised his hand, brushing his thumb softly across her tear-stained cheek, wiping it clear of any signs of sadness. This time he buried her into his neck, just like she had with him. Back when I was growing up, everyone knew I was the jailer for the Nine Tails. Well, in some way or another, most younger people didn't know, but they knew not to go anywhere near me. I never understood it. I had no idea I had the fox sealed inside me. Everywhere I went I could feel them glaring at me, and I wish that's all they did to me. He explained solemnly, his tone lonely and hurt. She flinched in his embrace at the implications but remembered what Tsunade had told her during her first meeting with the elder blonde. He hasn't exactly led an easy life. The Hokage D told her, and Tayuya realized that the busty blonde had meant it. The redhead had the feeling that over time she'd find out even more disgusting things about Naruto's past, just like she knew eventually he'd learn of hers. I don't want anyone to ever feel what I did. He clutched her tight as if promising to keep her safe. She lazily threw her arms around him, holding him tight against her as he continued. That's why. I'll be the Hokage and make sure everyone is treated equally. But, Naruto pulled back to look at Tayuya in his arms, a small smile reaching his features which she returned with her own. I can't do it without your help, Tayuya-sensei. He grinned smugly at her, causing her to scoff in amusement. How could he go from being so serious to acting like a complete goofball? Though, she guessed that was his own version of a cover-up, still she was glad to see he was okay. TCH, you're not gettin' nothin' from me if you don't finish messin' with my hair. I'm getting cold here, you asshole. She shot back with a sly smirk, causing him to grin down at her, happy that their little breakdown was over. Still he couldn't help but do one last thing. Eyes closed, he ordered as the tear once again flown soothingly down her crimson locks. The kunoichi folded her arms and huffed with mock anger but did as she was told, letting her head rest back into the white ceramic sink as the BL-owned went back to work cleaning her sudsy crimson locks. After a few moments of silence, Naruto leaned into her ear, whispering softly as he did. Thank you. He pulled back with a soft smile, but Tayuya immediately shuddered and snapped open her eyes as her whole body shivered. Naruto broke into laughter, causing the redhead to let out a low growl. A deadly smile stretched across her face, causing the blonde to gulp in fear. Ah, Taiyu-chan. He yelped out. To his surprise, the kunoichi instantly stole the shower hose from his grip without him even realizing. He looked at his empty hand with conference. Yujin then felt her hand gripping the back of his hair not so gently. Here, let me help wash yours. She spoke with barely contained rage as her embarrassment had gotten the better of her. Naruto tried to wiggle free from her surprisingly strong grip, but it was hopeless. She dunked him down into the sink, turned on the taps with her free hand and blasted the back of his head with the shower. Tayuya grabbed the shampoo and violently started scrubbing his blonde locks as forcefully as she could manage, with an evil laugh of supremacy. Not so funny now, is it, asshole? She yelled out while continuing to clean the panicking blonde who kept wiggling in her grip. Water was flying everywhere, but she didn't care. She had to assert her dominance and show him who's boss. BRLBLGGLBLGLBLGLBL. He attempted to speak and soon found his mouth was full of soapy water as Tayuya continued to push his head down into the sink. As he talked, she yanked his head upwards so he could actually speak successfully. I'm sorry. I won't do it, ag BRLBBLRBLGLBL. He attempted to apologize but was quickly slammed back into the water as Tayuya laughed evilly, the sound echoing around the bathroom, only making it sound more sinister to the possibly drowning blonde. She yanked his head up again. What was that, asshole? She interrogated with a victorious smirk as he looked at her weakly. I'm sorry. I won't do it, ag BRBLBLGLBLG. To his horror, Tayuya had shoved him under once again, causing him to get a mouthful of bubbly shampoo water. At this rate he was sure he was going to drown. Shit never gets old. She happily smacked him on the back with a thud, causing him to shoot to the floor as her surprising strength caused his knees to buckle. She peered down at him as he was laid out cold on the floor. A look of concern fell across her face. Asshole. She leant forward as much she could to get a good look at the soaked blonde, then huffed, shrugging her shoulders as she realized he was playing her. Ah well, guess he's dead. Nothing I can do 'bout it. She smirked as he twitched with annoyance. He jumped to his feet, pointing accusingly in her face with a betrayed look on his face. What do you mean? I guess he's dead. I could have been hurt. He whined sadly, though it only caused her to chuckle at his expense, folding her arms over her chest with a smirk as she eyed him. Huh. If why? Oh, you get hurt from shit like this, then you're no good to me, asshole. Tayuya teased, jabbing him lightly on the arm to get her point across. He huffed happily, letting a foxy grin light up his face. Yeah, whatever you say, Tayyu-chan, let's go, we still got trainin' to do. He stated happily, and with a move that surprised the redhead he picked her up by her waist, hoisting her over his shoulder and carried her out of the bathroom. Oi, the hell are you doing, asshole? Put me down. She held onto his neck for dear life as it felt she might fall forwards at any given moment. Annoyingly, the blonde did just ignored her cries and walked over to the bedroom of the apartment. He delicately placed her down on the bed, leaving her to sit up on it comfortably, following him with her eyes as he moved to the cupboards. She looked down at herself, now realizing the clothing she was wearing was completely unwearable. It was covered in soapy water from their little water fight. Still, she couldn't help but smile again. Something she couldn't seem to stop doing lately. Maybe it's not so bad here after all, she thought happily as she glanced over to her blonde caretaker, who was preparing their change of outfit. He soon leaned out of the cupboard and thrown her share of the clothing at her that annoyingly fell over her face, blocking her vision. Tayuya snarled in anger as the blonde chuckled at her expense, which only made her huff. You're real good at being an asshole, you know that. She spat with rage as she forcefully yanked the clothing of her face to glare daggers at him. He only gave her that cheery sunshine smile, though. Whatever you say, buttface. The blonde countered to her surprise. A frown fell across her face as a smirk came about her features. The redhead folded her arms and continued to glare at him. The hell you just call me? She roared, hoping to get a rise out of him, but he merely grinned at her with his usual foxy expression while taking out his own change of shirt. It's not my fault you wear pants on your face. Buttface. Naruto replied cheekily while pulling off his shirt. Not really caring that Tayuya was in the room, he pulled on the change of clothes. Only to hear her cracking her knuckles in a way which promised pain. Don't make me beat your ass, blondie. The kunoichi smirked at him while attempting to maintain some form of glare, but Naruto folded his arms, confusing her as he looked out of the window into the distance, doing his best, cool guy, expression. HN, you're lucky you're still of use to me, otherwise those words may have cost you your life. He nodded finally in a lame manner. He was sure that was a line that Sasuke would have came out with. He even borrowed his trademark, HN, which almost made him smile in remembrance. To his surprise, though, the redhead had gone completely silent. She even looked a little pale, her eyes cast downwards towards her knees as a shadow seemed to fall over her eyes. The blonde gulped, immediately regretting his actions. He inched closer, taking a step towards her. Tayyu-chan, he questioned with worry, leaning over slightly in an attempt to see her face. Suddenly Tayuya snapped her head upwards and pointed angrily at him. You fucking liar, she yelled hoarsely, her face contorted with a pained expression. Her eyes looked glassy as water danced around, threatening to fall down her face. Naruto looked confused but slowly inched forward towards the bed in an attempt to calm her down. No way, I was just messing around, he replied sadly, his eyes downcast as he moved a little closer to her. The blonde felt his stomach sink. This isn't what he wanted at all. He wanted to see her grin back at him, to tell him how stupid he looked acting like that. Get out, she roared at him, her voice so loud that her upper body trembled slightly from the force. Naruto's eyes danced over her with a hurt expression and the room once again fell silent, but the blonde made no move to leave. Hitch only further infuriated the hot-tempered kunoichi. I believed you fucking liked me, you fucking shitty rat. She finally lost it as she yelled. Tears raced down her cheeks as the dam finally broke. She sniffed once, still pointing at him with a shaky finger. Still of use to you? Well, guess what, shitface? You can forget it. You can run after that faggot Uchiha and I'll laugh as he kicks you. Our horrible ass all the way back to Konoha. Tayuya continued to vent her emotions. The blonde winced painfully at that one, feeling his own tears biting at his eyes. Why did he always have to screw something up? His heart was beating painfully in his chest, thudding in his ears at an almost deafening volume. The blonde felt sick as he looked at her pained expression that he'd caused. He moved forward again slowly. Tayyu, get out, She spat venomously, interrupting him with such force that he could tell she was deadly serious. A frown fell across his features and he threw caution to the wind, deciding to risk it. No way! He yelled and jumped onto the bed, closing the distance between them. He grabbed both of her hands in his, pushing them behind her and against the bed's headrest. There was still room between them. But this way she couldn't lash out at him. Naruto's eyes looked down at her desperately, hoping she'd gaze up at him, but she turned her head away in what seemed like disgust. He knew he'd seriously hurt her with what he'd said. There's no way I'll leave and let you think like this. I care about you way too much for that. He yelled passionately from point-blank range. He felt her flinch at his words. She looked up at him defiantly. He watched on in silence as the redhead's watery chocolate orbs studied him, looking straight into his determined cerulean eyes as he stared right back. The blonde felt her arms weaken their resistance, letting him hold them against the headrest without struggling. He softened his grip, gently threading his fingers through hers to hold her hands in his while letting his head fall softly against hers. Tayuya's eyes looked into his while darting around, seeming to be taking in as much of him as she could as his forehead rested against her own. She felt his blonde locks tickling her skin but made no move to get away from him. In fact, she leaned against him, looking down to avoid his gaze as embarrassment washed over her. They never been as close to someone as I have with you. He whispered softly, a small genuine smile tugging his lips upwards as he felt the heat of her head touching his gently. Probably 'cause you couldn't be any closer to someone than this, fucking idiot. She replied just as softly, moving her head slightly to brush her nose delicately against his. She peeled her eyes away from her knees to look back at him. His tiny smile warming her heart as she realized that she'd been weak. She'd lost her trust in him and hurt him and herself in the process when all he was doing was trying to make her laugh. They both said in unison, awkwardly interrupting each other as they both attempted to speak at the same time. A moment of silence passed, embarrassment got the best of Tayuya and she nudged his nose again, silently willing him to go first. She felt his thumbs brush over the backs of her hands in a way that soothed her like nothing else in the world as gentle warmth rose in her stomach. I'll never stop needing you. Naruto spoke truthfully, moving his own head to gently brush his nose against hers like she'd done to him. He leant down a little to get a better view of her eyes that seemed to be evading his gaze. Tayuya didn't move her head, instead she slowly rolled her eyes upwards to meet his in a way that made his heart flutter. The blonde could even feel her gentle breath against his face, making heat rise in his cheeks. To his surprise, Tayuya gripped his hands in hers a little tighter, now holding his in her own. Still, that was nothing compared to what came next. She moved her head upwards, softly stroking his nose with hers once more as her breath hitched with her nervousness. I need you too, he heard her whisper. For the first time she truly felt delicate in his hold. Vulnerable and in need of loving care much like himself, he felt her struggle to say those words to him and it made it so much more powerful in meaning. His heart quickened to 1,000,000 beats per second as they both gulped anxiously. They leaned even closer, closing their eyes as they did. Bang, bang, bang. Their eyes shot open suddenly, completely aware of what was about to happen. EY sat there frozen completely as they studied each other with crimson cheeks, hearts still beating quickly in their chests. They didn't know what to even do in this moment, their stunted emotional ills completely shutting down on them to leave them with this bittersweet occasion. Naruto. The muffled voice from behind the door called out sweetly. The two instantly recognized the voice, causing Tayuya to instantly frown. The blonde could only do his best to look sheepish yet wasn't brave enough to move away to answer the door as he felt his hands still wrapped up warmly in Tayuya's soft fingers. Sakura frowned as she heard no reply even after calling out, the vein in her forehead threatening to surface as she looked at the unmoving apartment door. An overly sweet smile appeared on her face as turned her fist on its side like a demolition hammer. Bang, 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 bang. Naruto. She yelled aggressively, her hand beating against the door like a jackhammer as she lost her composure, though she let out a gentle cough afterwards, glancing around nervously, making sure that no one had seen her act so violently. Her delicate little smile warmed her face once more as she awaited her teammate. Patience was not Sakura's strong suit. She arrived at 9:29, it was now 9:30, this alone was enough to cause her to consider breaking and entering. She huffed angrily as her temper got the best of her. Bang, bang, Bang 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 bang. She was no longer knocking individually, now it was as if she was hoping to bust through the door with her fist rapidly pounding it into dust. Naruto. She roared angrily as she thumped on the door. She knew he was in there. He had to be. It was only early and well, this was Naruto she was thinking about, he loved to sleep in if he could. Open the fucking door, Shanaru. Inner Sakura raged as the pinkett battered the poor apartment door. Tayuya sighed, letting her fingers slip out of Naruto's much to her annoyance, the redhead glared towards the doorway. Right now considering whatever punishment she faced for murdering a leaf ninja well worth it if she could get her hands on the pinkett who was currently caving in the apartment door. TCH. Looks like Pinky ain't going nowhere. Tayuya spat while angrily turning her head to look out of the window, glaring up at the clouds as if it was somehow all their fault, her eyes widened in surprise as she felt strong arms around her waist, hugging her tightly for just a moment before breaking away to race over to the door. The kunoichi sighed as the warmth left her and Naruto bounded over to the front door wordlessly in an attempt to hide his embarrassment. Tayuya looked down at the bed sheets, curious to why she was so damn angry right now. She gulped, she was really acting as if she had wanted that to happen. Like she had wanted him to kiss her. TCH. Yeah right. Who the hell would want something like that? I just can't stand that pink-haired banshee coming over here whenever she feels like. Tayuya had to admit, even she wasn't stubborn enough to go along with the pitifully weak excuse that she had managed to come up with. She huffed angrily, slamming her hands down on the bed. Clenching her eyes shut in embarrassment. So I wanted it. So what? Why does that have to be a bad thing? He actually gives a crap about me, and well, MMH, she blushed HEA. Vali as she tried to keep her thoughts truthful. Well, I really care about him too. She opened her eyes looking down at her knees like a kicked puppy as her full face lit up an adorable shade of red. Her heart beating quickly as a tiny smile graced her features, for some reason it felt good to be honest to herself. She wasn't as emotionally oblivious as everyone seemed to make out after all, and even if she was, she had the intelligence to figure out whatever her emotional awareness couldn't. Hey Naruto. Sakura greeted merrily, showing off her gentle smile. The blonde couldn't help his nervousness. Still a little in shock from his previous close encounter with the redhead in his bedroom, not that he was going to attempt to explain it to Sakura, but still, it was embarrassing somehow. Hey Sakura. Sakura-chan. Hey. Haha. Sakura-chan, what are you doing here? He had to quickly correct himself from forgetting her honorific. The Uzumaki even noticed the slight surprise that spread across the pinkett's face, though it soon turned to concern as he muttered out a hastily thrown together greeting. Naruto, is there something you're not telling me? Are you sick again? She asked with a caring frown. She brought her palm up to his forehead as if checking his temperature, but this only made the blonde's face turn a deep shade of red in his embarrassment. Haha. I'm fine. You know me. Just training too much, that's it. Had to come back here to take a quick break, but then I'll be right back to it. He lied lamely, flashing her a strained foxy grin that she didn't seem to buy one bit. She'd been around Naruto enough to know him better than this. Inside. I'm going to give you a check over. She stated in a commanding tone that he knew meant he had no choice in the matter. He groaned weakly but allowed her to step inside, closing the apartment door behind her, then slumped down on his tired brown couch. Well, at least it'll give me a bit more time to rest before Tayuya-chan makes me train again. Naruto thought with a mischievous smile, but was soon snapped out of his thoughts when he felt Sakura gently push against his back, causing him to lay down across the couch for his check over. It'll only take a minute, so just try to relax. Besides, you're helping me out by being one of my patients. I need all the training I can get. She giggled happily as her hands began to glow a soft green while she prepared the diagnostic jutsu. Wow, Sakura-chan, you sure have come a long way since you kept killing those fish. The blonde spat out in his surprise, causing the pinkett to let out a rather aggressive huff. They did not die. They were already dead. I had to restart their heartbeats. She explained with a strained smile and a rather obvious frown as she bit back her temper. Naruto only chuckled weakly, hoping she didn't choose to smack him upside the head for angering her. Oi, the hell you doin' to the asshole, Pinky? Tayuya roared Fr. The bedroom, clearly not wanting to be forgotten. The redhead had managed to wiggle across the bed a little so that she could look out of the door frame, clearly interested in what Sakura was up to with the blonde. I'm just giving him the standard check over, don't worry Tayuya. In fact I should give you a check over too. Maybe I can ask Tsunade-sama for some painkillers if they're still causing you a lot of discomfort. Sakura tried, almost blackmailing the ex-sound Kunoichi with the promise of medication, still it didn't seem to have the desired effect if Tayuya's folded arms and deep scowl were any indications. TCH. Like hell Pinky. Asshole might have no choice but to be your guinea pig but I sure as hell ain't. She huffed, turning her head away in a disinterested manner, though Tayuya soon turned around again. Examining what Sakura was doing to her blonde-haired caretaker, even leaning up slightly as she sat on the bed trying to peek in on the procedure. Now hold still, it'll only take a second. The cherry blossom girl advised in a very nurse-like manner. As Naruto lay there on the couch motionless, he couldn't help but wonder if Sakura had practiced her nurse voice in her spare time. He gulped. He was almost certain that she had. He felt the gentle warmth of the healing chakra flow through his body as Sakura diligently moved her hands back and forth, hovering them over his limbs, frowning as she did. Much to the blonde's confusion, she stood up, a firm look of concern on her features like a parent scolding a child. Naruto, what have you been doing now? Your muscles are all torn up. She diagnosed with her hands planted on her hips in a very Ino-like manner. The blonde could only chuckle desperately at her tone, not quite sure what to say to that. Well, I guess it's just from the weight training. He offered innocently while scratching the back of his head. He hoped she wouldn't press the matter any further. He didn't want to get Tayuya into trouble after all. It wasn't Sakura he was worried about, it was Tsunade. He knew how overprotective of him she could be, and if the Hokage found out he was running around with 150 kilos without any sort of build-up, then she'd definitely punch him through a wall or two just to make sure he didn't do it again. HMPH. Surely you're not this sore from just a little weight, Naruto. I thought you were stronger than that. She said with a playful giggle, hoping to get a rise out of her teammate. To her shock though, her response came from the other room. TCH. A little weight. He was trainin' with me, Pinky. I strapped 150 kilos to him and had him run 10 laps round Konoha. Should have seen him go. Tayuya had puffed out her chest in a proud manner, crossing her arms over it as if to show her superiority in some way. Sakura looked rightfully surprised, her eyes widening to the size of dinner plates as she heard the number. The pinkett glanced from Tayuya to Naruto, the N back again as she struggled to understand. 150 kilos. You're lucky he can even move. The pinkett yelled in disbelief, staring down at her teammate with concern, but he just shot her a cheery grin that told her he was fine. Not that it was of much relief. Naruto was always fine. Idiot, you could have been seriously hurt. Sakura pouted childishly, bopping him on the head tly with her fist, causing him to rub the spot on his head playfully, pretending that it had hurt. Hey, don't underestimate me, Pinky. I know all about that fox and its healing. That's why I'm gonna be the best teacher that asshole has ever had. You'll see, gimme a week and I promise we'll surprise you and your sensei. Tayuya declared, full of confidence. To her surprise though, an evil grin fell across Sakura's features. The pinkett was clearly up to something, but Tayuya didn't care. Fine, let's make this interesting. If you two don't surprise me and Kakashi-sensei, then you have to help me Tsunade-sama's training whenever I need you to. She announced with her hands once again on her hips as her smile challenged the ex-sound Kunoichi. The redhead shot back a fierce glare, but Sakura didn't budge, causing Tayuya to huff casually, shrugging her arms as she did. Wait, Taiyu, Naruto desperately tried to interrupt, sitting up from his place on the couch as he did. There was one thing wrong with this bet. One condition he knew they couldn't follow. Fine, you're on, Pinky. It'll be easy, you'll see. And, if we win. Tayuya grinned back, a fiery glint in her eye that promised pain and misery or a lifetime of trauma. It was difficult to tell which. Then you have to try and keep up with our trainin' for a week. Though I'd probably be nice enough to lower the weights for ya. I'm cool like that. The redhead shrugged, closing her eyes with a satisfied smirk which only caused Sakura to get even more competitive. You're on. HMPH. I'd better go, you two will need all the time you can get. Be sure you're ready to help next week. The cherry blossom huffed with a giggle as she left the apartment, turning only to wave a little goodbye to her blonde-haired teammate. She wouldn't admit it, but she was excited by their little bet. Either way, she'd be getting help with her training. If they won and managed to surprise Kakashi, then Sakura would be more than willing to attempt that training herself. She closed the apartment door behind her as she walked down the building's stairs, an evil smirk blessing her face as she thought about her silver-haired sensei. Obviously Tayuya had never met the man. Sakura didn't think he even knew what being surprised was, except for when he got too engrossed in his little orange books and let out gasps of shock as the relationship drive. Amas continued to unfold, but she'd really rather not mention that to Tayuya. With a spring in her step, she headed back to the Hokage office, confident in the knowledge that soon she'd have her own assistants. "Ah, Taiyu-chan, I guess we should probably get back to trainin', huh?" The blonde asked while stepping into the bedroom with a worried expression. He couldn't help but wonder if they'd bit 10 of more than they could chew with their little wager, but he was excited all the same. Lesson 1. Tayuya yelled powerfully. The blonde buckled over the bed, leaning over her as she'd planted her fist firmly in his ribs. His head rested over her shoulder and her fist soon relaxed. "Don't let your guard down." She smirked victoriously, causing him to huff out a pained sigh, but nodded his head in agreement anyways. It was a valuable lesson after all, and he'd been surprised by her sudden movement. Still, the punch was nothing compared to what came next. She hugged him tightly against her with all of her strength. He could feel her once again opening up, becoming vulnerable and weak as she attempted to display her emotions to him as best she could. Don't ever leave my side," she whispered in a flustered squeak. Her face matching the shade of her hair as she rested her chin on his right shoulder while he rested on the redhead's left one. Naruto felt his face soften, a gentle grin gracing his features as he leaned closer to her, wrapping her up in his arms and hugging her tightly in a silent promise. "Why, you're still an asshole though," she suddenly roared, completely ruining the delicate moment to most, but for the blonde it only made him smile harder as he felt her breath tickle his neck as she attempted to hide her face against him. He'd always be there for her. Naruto let out a groan as they exited the apartment. Tayuya was happily hanging onto him, her arms snaked around his neck as she cuddled into him after their little moment of closeness. "Come on, asshole, get movin' already, we're wastin' daylight here." The redhead had shifted back into training instructor mode, much to Naruto's displeasure. His muscles were still groaning at him from his earlier workout of running around Konoha with his new weights. Still, he was smarter than to complain about it. I'm going," he muttered hastily as they left the building and walked down the apartment stairs at a steady pace to ensure the kunoichi didn't fall from her place on his back. "TCH. What ninjutsu do you know anyways? Don't tell me I gotta teach you all about chakra too." Tayuya teased with a a smirk that only caused the blonde to frown in annoyance. "Hey, I'm not that bad, I know some ninjutsu," he whined childishly, pouting as he did, much to her amusement. They were now walking through the main streets of Konoha towards the training grounds, but took a moment to stop as they discussed Naruto's current skill set. "Yeah, well, what are they? Or were you planning to make me guess? I know I'm awesome, asshole, but I ain't no mind reader." Tayuya huffed impatiently, messing with the blonde's hair with one of her hands as if to get her point across, and she'd actually grown to like the sensation. Not that she'd let him know that, of course. "Well, I know the shadow clone technique, the academy stuff, my Rasengan. Oh, and the summoning technique, you should see it. Boss Toad is huge, like the size of like 50 houses." Naruto explained while waving his arms around in the air, trying to give the redhead an accurate representation of just how big Gamabunta really was. The redhead raised a curious eyebrow at this. The toad summon helped to fight off the one-tailed beast during the Sound's invasion of Konoha, if she remembered correctly. "So you signed the summoning scroll from that pervert Sanin. Not bad, asshole. Still, don't you know like any elemental techniques?" she replied in a deadpan tone. For some reason she had already worked out the answer before she'd even asked the question. "Ah, you mean like fireballs and stuff? 'Cause I've never been taught any of the cool stuff like that." "Wait, is that what you're gonna teach me?" Naruto suddenly realized, his eyes shining with joy and enthusiasm that only caused the redhead to chuckle at his innocence. "Well, that depends. What elements does the shitty Uchiha use?" Tayuya questioned sternly while inging a hand up to hold her chin in a thinking manner. she even puffed out her lips a little in concentration. Well, he always used his stupid grand fireball technique, all the Uchihas know that one. He mumbled with a hint of jealousy clear in his tone of voice. Oh, and he can use Kakashi-sensei's Chidori, so I guess that means lightning and fire. Naruto contemplated aloud while scratching his head. He was still annoyed that Kakashi had taught a move like that to Sasuke but not him. Even if his sensei's technique couldn't be used without a Sharingan, it still felt like blatant favoritism. Still, he'd never studied anything like this, so he had to admit he was a little nervous. Well then, guess you're gonna learn wind and water shit then, if you got an affinity for either of those. It'd help us out a lot, so you better hope we get lucky. She explained in her best instructor voice, though it seemed to be working as the blonde nodded in agreement and kept walking down the busy street. Maybe I can learn that cool water dragon technique like Zabuza used. Man, it was so awesome. Kakashi-sensei totally copied it, and then there was 2 huge water dragons. Naruto excitedly rant. Ed with hand movements acting as the 2 dragons slamming into each other, causing Tayuya to roll her eyes at his antics. Yeah, whatever you say, asshole. First you gotta study the smaller crap, Don't you know anyone that might be able to help us get some jutsu scrolls to study? Tayuya asked while ignoring his lame retelling of Kakashi's battle with Zabuza. She folded her arms around him, snuggling against his back comfortably. He was so childish and warm and so unlike anything Tayuya had ever been around before, it was becoming slightly addicting to the hot-tempered redhead. Well. I guess Kakashi-sensei would probably be our best chance. Maybe not for scrolls though, he has the Sharingan, so he kinda just copies them. It's so cool. People say he knows like 1,000 jutsu, one day I wanna be like that too. Naruto once again got ahead of himself at the prospect of learning ninjutsu. Tayuya began to wonder if this was why no one had ever taught him any elemental skills though. She couldn't hide the tiny smile that crept over her face. He may have been an idiot, but he was her idiot. Whoa, where did that come from? There's no way asshole is mine, that doesn't even make any sense. Tayuya thought to herself with confusion, her nose crinkling with annoyance. Lately she had been thinking more openly on matters involving her blonde-haired caretaker, but they could still throw her off guard when they came out of nowhere. Suddenly the image of Sakura and Naruto hugging in their apartment came to the front of the redhead's mind, causing her to glare down at his back, her eyebrows angling and her grip on him becoming a little tighter. TCH. No matter how many times I think about it, seeing them like that will always piss me off. It's just so wrong somehow. Even if hey are friends and teammates or whatever. Tayuya raged at the image as she glanced down to Naruto, who was now ranting on about huge techniques that he was definitely going to master. She took no notice of it, deciding to tune into her thoughts. From seemingly nowhere a new thought crossed her mind as she thought about the 2 teammates being so close together, a thought that even surprised her with how bold it was. It should be me he's hugging like that. I mean, fuck. I don't even know what I meant. This is so stupid. Why am I even thinking about crap like this? She shook her head in annoyance, banishing the thoughts for a later date as she attempted to pay attention to the loud-mouthed blonde that was far too excited for his own good. And, if we ask Kakashi-sensei, then he won't be surprised when he sees me use them. Her blonde caretaker stood still, stopping for a moment and holding his chin in thought. That means our best chance is to go see Ba-chan. I'm sure she must know at least something to help. Naruto finally realized, nodding his head as he changed course for the Hokage Tower. Tsunade always had the answer, even if she was crude. Naruto loved and trusted her. She was a little biased towards him too, so he was sure she'd spoil him as usual. Wait, Ba-chan? Who the hell is Ba-chan? Tayuya asked in sudden confusion, leaning into him a little closer with curiosity. She didn't realize that Naruto had any relatives. In fact, there was barely even anyone blonde around Konoha except for that one girl that had pissed her off with Sakura. That's the Hokage, you know her right? She'll help us for sure. He suddenly announced, much to the redhead's shock, causing her to hold on to him for dear life as he raced across the rooftops to the Hokage Tower. Naruto was looking forward to seeing Tsunade like he always was. To him she was practically family after all. Of course I know her, idiot. You really think she'll just hand over scrolls to you though? Tayuya shouted loudly against the wind as they sped towards the center of the village. It was a good job she was as strong as she was, otherwise she'd have had trouble holding on right now. Well, probably. Naruto replied merrily, his usual carefree tone causing her to sigh in irritation. The blonde had no idea if Tsunade really even used ninjutsu outside of her medical techniques. The X sound. Kunoichi just let her head plop against the back of his neck in defeat, considering that surely the Hokage could help them out in some way. Oi ba-chan, Naruto announced happily while bursting through the door to the Hokage's office. He had that usual goofy grin on his face. His visit had taken Tsunade completely by surprise, though the elder blonde couldn't help but smirk as she saw the two troublemakers looking so happy together. Maybe she'd accidentally played matchmaker by forcing Tayuya upon him. What is it, brat? Can't you see I'm busy? I've got a village to run here. Tsunade barked, with authority before falling into smirk. By now she knew it wouldn't wash with Naruto, but she had to keep face after all. Well, look at the two of you marchin' round together, looks like trash learns to stick together. Tayuya taunted as soon as she realized who was in the office. She glared over at Temari and Shikamaru, who were currently on business. Temari was now Suna's representative in the village after all. HMPH. You're one to talk, especially with the way you're hanging off Naruto like that. Temari shot back, a proud look on her face as she eyed the redhead confidently. Even Tsunade couldn't help but look smug at that. Resting her chin on her laced-together fingers. To her the two brats just looked so adorable it made her want to embarrass the living crap out of them. She smiled evilly. She'd just have to wait until no one else was in her office. Tayuya gripped the blonde's clothing in anger, lifting her head up higher to glare down at the Suna Kunoichi in fiery rage. She really hated the look on Temari's face. It was her fault she was even like this. She forced a smile, not letting Temari have the satisfaction of getting to her. Yeah, well, this is for medical reasons. Maybe you shouldn't have broke my legs with that shitty fan of yours, only thing it's good for is hiding your dumb fuck smile. She replied, not able to stop her huff of clear irritation. The blonde's remark had obviously hit a nerve. Tayuya had never taken well to teasing, especially when it was about her feelings. She didn't want to seem weak for enjoying things like this. Naruto and Shikamaru just looked at each other with a lazy sigh. They had a feeling they knew what was going to happen. Besides, you're lucky that they are broken. It's the only thing stopping me from kicking your perky ass all the way back to Suna, you sand rat. Tayuya grumbled evilly, her fist raised in a silent promise of pain. She couldn't help but smirk at her success as a faint blush of embarrassment fell across Temari's features. The poor girl obviously thrown off by the redhead's mannerisms. P perky ass. What has that got to do with anything? Temari shot back defensively, folding her arms across her chest in attempt to cover herself. The blonde then realized that Shikamaru was casually leaning backwards, apparently trying to get a better look. An irritated scowl dressed her face. Oh, stop it, you pervert! She yelled in annoyance, jabbing him angrily on the arm, causing him to rub the back of his head sheepishly. He had hoped she was too busy focusing on the redhead's argument. I grew up around guys, you learn to talk about this shit. Just like Hokage-sama here has an awesome rack. Tayuya spat out with a cheeky grin, shocking the people present in the room, especially Temari, who seemed to get even more flustered. A slight redness biting at her tanned cheeks. Tsunade snapped her head up with a proud smirk. She glanced around the room making sure no one was looking, then pushed out her saiza. Ble chest proudly at the redhead's praise. Lady Tsunade, Shizune suddenly announced, having caught her master in the act from the corner of her eyes. A light pink dusted her cheeks as she saw her mentor puff out her chest smugly. Lighten up, Shizune. You're no fun, why don't you comment on my awesome rack, huh? The elder blonde teased with a mischievous smirk, causing Shizune to look away in EMB. Harassment with a small blush across her cheeks. She sighed heavily, unable to believe how childish Tsunade was. Well, I hardly think it's appropriate, Tsunade-sama. The apprentice managed to spit out in response. Unfortunately, it only seemed to make the Hokage's grin wider. Ma, now this seems to be my kind of conversation. A lazy voice announced as he entered the room, offering a casual eye smile as he did. Tsunade felt anger wash over her at the newcomer. Don't even think about it, Hitaki. She roared in a terrifying manner as she launched the perverted silver-haired Junin straight through the wall. Past the door that he had just entered through. The onlookers of the room could only wince in sympathy for the man. HMPH. Well then, let me talk about you. Not that there's much to talk about. Tamari suddenly announced to the redhead as she looked Tayuya up and down, a dirty scowl on her face. It seems like growing up with guys had other effects on you, seeing as your figure is just as, well, boyish. The Suna Kunoichi shot back with a mocking, HMPH, looking down her nose as she glanced over Tayuya's form. Everyone in the room managed to flinch at that, knowing that NGS were probably going to start getting out of hand. Well, everyone except Naruto, who had no idea what they were talking about. How did Tayuya look boyish? To him she seemed like one of the prettiest girls around. He frowned deeply. His nose scrunching up in his confusion, maybe he was missing something here. The room was silent. It looked as if the redhead was unfazed, seemingly uncaring that Tamari had mocked her appearance. Tayuya's eyebrow trembled as she bit back frustration. Appearance was something that she was rather self-conscious about. She managed to fight the sinking feeling in her stomach as she felt her arms still wrapped around her Uzumaki caretaker. He didn't seem to think of her like that, right? I knew it, you and Pineapple Head are perfect for each other. You're both annoying little shits. She growled through gritted teeth. The Sand Kunoichi blushed a rosy pink and seemed to be getting more frustrated by the second. Somehow Tayuya just managed to get under her skin. What most members of the room didn't realize was the redhead cuddling closer to Naruto as if he was her safety blanket from the negative feelings that just washed over her. She suddenly felt rather insecure about herself. Hollow, uncomfortable and fidgety in her own skin. The hot-tempered ex-sound ninja couldn't help but wonder if she was really so unattractive. Who the hell does this sand rat think she is? I'm in great shape, I'm a Kunoichi after all. She's just jealous she isn't as toned and strong as me, or is that a bad thing for girls? Why should I even care? I'd kick her ass it out that fan and that's what really matters. She vented within her mind, not fully understanding why she was getting so worked up over the blonde's insult. Clearly Tamari had said it out of spite. Right now the hot-tempered redhead didn't feel so sure of herself. At least I think so. She questioned inwardly. A slight tugging sensation gripped her heartstrings. Even her thoughts sounded depressed right now. She took a glance down at Naruto. He didn't seem to mind hugging her or being, well, rather close to her. If she was boyish, she doubted the blonde would have any kind of interest in being like that with her. Tayuya couldn't help the small sigh that escaped her. Whatever, I can't help the way I look, goddamn sand bitch. She raged inwardly while snaking her arms around Naruto defensively. For some reason she was overcome with the feeling of not wanting to lose her caretaker and couldn't help but hold him closer, refusing to let him go. HMN. In that case, you and Naruto are perfect for each other, seeing as you're both so troublesome. Shikamaru countered with his usual heavy sigh, his features totally uninterested as he rubbed the back of his neck. Joining the conversation was too much effort for him to deal with in the first place. Tayuya did her best not to react, but despite her efforts she could feel that menacing sensation. Her neck flooded with a gentle warmth and her face quickly followed suit. The redhead glanced down at her blonde caretaker, a little curious at how he'd react to someone considering them being together in a romantic way. The redhead's eyes softened slightly as she glanced down at the poor boy who seemed to be suffering just as badly as her. His cheeks were dusted with a faint pink blush that made her want to forget the world and just squeeze him with all of her strength. He looks so different like this, she excused herself to take in a brief moment of calm. For some reason his stupid face is making me wanna smile, he looks so helpless. She admitted to herself, allowing her lips to tug upwards into a delicate, tiny grin. Naruto had been stammering up a storm and looking for a way to escape the somewhat awkward situation. He just came for the scrolls and somehow had been dragged into an argument. He could feel himself shutting down to the world around him, the image of him and Tayuya being together as a couple seizing all control from him. Actually, I came here to ask you if you got any awesome jutsu I can learn. Like scrolls and stuff, he exclaimed with some difficulty. A nervous chuckle followed as he rubbed the back of his head. He couldn't shake the anxious feeling in his stomach. He hoped that it was enough to change the subject, while his mind drifted to his red-headed roommate. Does it really seem like we're like that? Sure, we're close, but there's usually a reason for it. The blonde thought to himself. He allowed his mind to wander. allowed his mind to picture being romantic with Tayuya. A simple daydream of the couple kissing, a powerful feeling of butterflies overcame him. He couldn't even kiss her in his imagination without being overpowered with new emotions. He snapped back to reality harshly as the feeling caused a gentle shiver to trace up his spine. Thankfully for the blonde, Tsunade simply looked up at him with a proud smirk. She couldn't help but love him for his determination and cheeky expressions. Her slender fingers threaded together once more as she became serious. As a Hokage, she had to know when to negotiate a good deal. So back to trainin', already, huh, brat? Okay. Being the generous person that I am, she smiled while shrugging her shoulders, attempting to look nonchalant, though everyone in the room could clearly tell she was up to something. I guess I can help you out, she answered while giving a rather over-the-top feminine sigh, her endearing act not having the desired effect as the room looked on seemingly unimpressed. But it'll cost you, Tsunade finished, crossing her arms over her chest with a trademark evil smirk, her brilliant hazel eyes focused seriously on Naruto, almost daring him to turn down her offer. Cost me? You mean you're gonna charge me? Why do you need my money? Don't tell me you want to gamble it away. Naruto shouted incredulously, his arms moving animatedly around as if to get his point across. He was really relying on Tsunade right now. Though there's no he'd tell her about his bet with Sakura, otherwise the older blonde would insist he suffers through her training alongside Tayuya's teaching. I knew you liked money, Ba-chan, but this isn't fair. I only wanna borrow them for a while, I promise. He continued in disbelief, his face upturned and pouty. He didn't notice the vein that appeared on the Hokage's forehead as she struggled to keep her cool. She had guests in her office and had already put one hole in the wall today. She didn't wanna make it two. Why, you little brat, I don't want your money. She glared and barely contained her anger, her eyes closed as she grit her teeth, her brows knitted together in a deep scowl. You can have the pleasure of my company while I drink tonight. The Hokage suddenly pouted childishly, glancing over to her attendant. Seeing as Shizune has decided to work the night shift at the hospital tonight, leaving me all alone. Tsunade finished with a dramatic sigh which only made her performance even less believable. It was obvious to everyone in the room that she was faking it. Shizune simply huffed in response, clearly used to her master's behavior by now. Tsunade-sama, I can't just abandon my post at the hospital just to keep you company while you get drunk again. The poor raven girl folded her arms with a dissatisfied look painted across her features. The elder blonde always made her feel guilty even if she was only teasing. Shizune was simply too kind for her own good. I'm the Hokage, serving me should come before all else. The powerful Sannin whined in a way that didn't quite match her terrifying battle records. Shizune sighed heavily, her arms hanging down by her sides in defeat. It was hopeless to resist her teasing. Tsunade-sama, please. You know I have work to do there. The attendant shook her head hopelessly. She knew that this was exactly the reaction Tsunade was looking for, much to her displeasure. Tsunade blessed everyone in the room with a dazzling smile at her apprentice's expense and let out a teasing cackle that boomed throughout the office. She glanced over to the now puzzled Naruto. It's fine, Shizune, I know you'll be working hard. After all, Naruto will be filling in for you anyway, isn't that right, brat? She questioned with authority, leaving the blue-eyed boy wishing Tayuya wasn't on his back so that he could rub his neck like he normally did during awkward situation. Or don't you want those scrolls? Such a shame too, I'm sure you would have put them to good use. The elder blonde faked disappointment, stretching her arms above her head as if no longer interested. She really wasn't subtle at all. Well, actually I was kinda gonna train at night time too, it's easier without lots of people around and stuff. Naruto tried desperately, a deadpan laugh escaping him while offering a weak grin. He really wasn't the best at coming up with excuses. Looks like you don't need the scrolls after all then, too bad. She struck a hard bargain, causing Naruto to growl in annoyance. Why couldn't she just hand them over simply? He had work to do. Better watch out, Tayuya, the Hokage's hitting on your man. Tamari whispered to the redhead. Tsunade slowly whipped around to face her with a menacing expression, causing the Sand Kunoichi to gulp. You realize I could probably too. RN your body into a sand so fine not even your cage could get any use out of you, right? The Sannin said in a sickeningly sweet voice that didn't match her statement. Yes, Hokage-sama. Tamari answered sharply. Bowing her head as she did, the blonde didn't care that Tayuya was smirking down at her, clearly satisfied with the situation. The X-Sound ninja had just about enough of listening to all these blondes and decided to settle things herself. Asshole will do it, we need those damn scrolls or we won't get anywhere with our training. The redhead agreed with a sigh, leaving Naruto sta. Ring up at her with a betrayed look on his face. He'd been sold off in exchange for scrolls. Great. Then it's settled, go with Shizune and she'll help you with whatever you need. Tsunade announced, Not giving Naruto a chance to voice his opinion, a warm smile dressing her face. But he stammered weakly, looking like a wounded puppy but was cut off by the powerful woman sat in front of him who narrowed her eyes dangerously. Then, it's settled. Go with Shizune, she stated with finality as her trembling right fist arose from her desk to where Naruto could see it clearly. The blonde sighed heavily. He knew what would happen if he kept pushing his luck. The only thing he could offer was a nervous laugh while hanging his head in defeat as they left the office with Shizune. It didn't take long for them to reach the Hokage's library situated within the tower. Shizune guided them to the ninjutsu section, patting along the scrolls with a fingertip while humming. She wasn't really all that sure what the two were even after. She chuckles nervously. So Tsunade-sama didn't exactly tell me what I was supposed to be giving you here, any pointers? The kind-hearted medical kunoichi asked while looking across at Naruto with an amused smile. He looked as excited as a kid in a toy store. The Hokage's apprentice then glanced up to Tayuya. She knew who was in charge here and was smarter than to let Naruto run wild on any jutsu he felt like learning, though after hearing he learned the Rasengan in just a week she was sure he was more than capable of just about anything he put his mind to. We're looking for something to do with water and wind. Oh, and do you guys have that test paper? You know, it shows your chakra affinity. Tayuya takes command, stumbling on the name of the chakra paper only to receive a warm giggle from the Raven Med ninja. Yes, we have that here, but are you sure Naruto-kun has the affinity for water and wind? She asks a little dubiously. That would make him capable of ice release. Who knows, I bet shithead here has never even checked his affinities, but well, if he has wind or water that's fine. Tayuya replied impatiently. She knew that the why wouldn't be able to train today, but she was kind of excited to learn a bit more about her blonde caretaker, even if it was as simple as this. Lately she had been paying attention to little details. Movements and expressions of his, and the worst part was she couldn't help but enjoy them all. They seemed so private and it made the redhead feel like they were hers somehow. Shizune smiled softly at the redhead's determination. The two of them were so alike. The med nin fluttered around, selecting several C-ranked jutsu from the shelves. She had confidence that if Naruto could learn the Rasengan then these should be no problem. The redhead glanced back at the busy Raven before grabbing two scrolls of her own. Except that these were B ranks, she subtly shoved them into her shirt with a sly look on her face. Hoping that Shizune hadn't noticed. Sorry that you're going to be stuck with Tsunade-sama tonight, Naruto-kun. She's been a little clingy since coming back to Konoha. Shizune smiled apologetically while handing over the scrolls and chakra paper. The blonde just laughed nervously. He didn't really mind spending time with Tsunade, but he figured that if he didn't train hard then he'd lose his bet with Sakura and would be spending a lot more time with Tsunade than he'd appreciate. Honestly, I think she's still getting used to being back here. The soft-spoken Raven continued, yet couldn't help but notice the blonde looking over at the forbidden scroll. It seemed as if he was still feeling a little guilty about it for some reason. Naruto-kun, what are you planning to do with the forbidden scroll? She placed her hands on her hips with a frown as if confronting a badly behaved child. It was unusual to see the stern but somehow still so gentle side of Shizune like this. Naruto threw up his hands defensively, alarmed that he'd been caught staring at it. Nothing. It's just, well, one of my teachers from the academy tricked me into stealing it. That's how I passed my genin test in the first place. By learning the shadow clones in just one night. He explained in a somewhat sullen tone, his face falling into one of deep thought. The blonde didn't expand much on the matter. He was obviously still hurt by the memory. Tayuya's eyebrows raised in slight surprise. He'd never told her anything like that. Her face scrunched up in a muddled expression and she couldn't help feeling a little jealous. How come he's able to open up so easily to her, like it's no big deal? I mean, she's nice and all, sure. She seemed really easy to get along with. That's not how I should be acting, is it? The conflicted redhead wondered. She scoffed, not wanting to interrupt the two of them. So that's how you learned the shadow clone technique. Shizune said with a soft giggle. Oh. Of course Naruto had gotten into mischief in order to learn his most used technique. Yeah, Kakashi-sensei told me that the chakra use is why they're forbidden, but I never seemed to have a problem with it. It always made me wonder if there was another reason that it was a forbidden technique. The confused blonde said, voicing his thoughts about the technique. Shizune's eyes widened in surprise. Wah! You don't know what shadow clones are capable of. One of the main reasons that they're forbidden is their ability to transfer information. It shouldn't be a problem for you since you're used to using so many, but, well. She rubbed her neck anxiously, wondering if she should be sharing this information, then considered that it could help Naruto to progress by insane margins. They could be used to retain information too, like training. A clone also passes over the mental strain though, so a lot of people could suffer from training with them. With your chakra and affinity with them, Naruto, I do. Think you'd have a problem using them to train. It could even speed up your training dramatically. Shizune explains as best she can, leaving the two teens awestruck. No way. Why did no one tell me this before? Naruto yelled in excitement. That was insane. Now learning these low techniques didn't seem like they'd be any trouble. By the way, is there anything on element manipulation that asshole can read? Or likely have his clones read? She looked down at him with a sigh, knowing that he was going to abuse the crap out of his clones now. Being able to do scroll jutsu is nice and all, being able to use his element however he wants would be a lot more useful. Tayuya says wisely, her intelligence was on par with Shikamaru's, so it wasn't flattery to say she was a genius. Shizune just raised a fingertip to her lips, taking a moment to think about it before scuttling off to the back of the room. She soon appeared with a large stack of books on wind and water manipulation and plaque. Add them away in a seal scroll for easy transport. Make sure you return all this stuff or Tsunade-sama will kill me. Well, even worse, she would probably forget all about it. Shizune gave a weak laugh at her master's priorities. Tsunade wasn't one to pay attention to such small details. You bet. I'll be done with them in no time anyways, thanks a lot for everything, Shizune-chan. He yelled approatively before bounding down the stairs of the Hokage Tower, setting course for home. Tayuya's features softened, so he thought of Shizune like a sister. Maybe that's why he's so comfortable around her. She considered, letting her face press into the crook of her caretaker's neck, enjoying their closeness as he slowly worked his way back to their apartment. Hey, how come you never told me about being tricked like that? She said softly against his back, the warmth of her breath tickling him slightly, causing the blonde to shiver. Naruto stopped for a moment, landing on a rooftop with a soft smile. Tayuya could be so adorable sometimes. I figured you'd think I was stupid. He replied lamely with a nervous chuckle, not sure what else to say on the matter. The blonde knew he had been naive to be so trusting. You are stupid, she replied instantly with a soft laugh, holding him a little closer. Reveling in the ability to talk so casually with someone, it filled her with a warmth whenever they were like this. But, learning such a high-level technique in one night is kinda cool, I guess. She continued. The Uzumaki didn't even have time to be hurt by her first comment. He stood there on the roof a little dazed by her praise. There are plenty of things that you do that are pretty amazing too. He responded softly, not even sure if she heard him as he leapt off again. Tayuya just closed her eyes. The feeling of her face reddening to a deep crimson caused her to close her eyes, leaning against him and biting down her frustration, just letting it happen. She let out a soft breath and allowed the feeling to simply wash over her. He wasn't saying these things to torment her. Naruto was saying these things because he meant them sincerely, and having someone praise and appreciate her was beginning to be one of her favorite sensations. Idiot. She muttered against the skin of his neck, deciding to stay quiet until they got home. As Naruto landed by their door, he wasted no time in pushing it open with a lazy grin, peering back at the prize of a woman that continued to nestle against his skin in her charming embarrassment. The blonde couldn't help but falter as he heard Tayuya's muted hiss of pain. She was obviously trying to endure it without him realizing she was suffering. A bath might help, Naruto said softly, Tayuya felt her cheeks bite at her face with sudden heat. She hated that. She hated that goddamn tone he managed. That only he seemed to achieve. Her hold on his jacket tightened and her fists gripping him trembled slightly in her deep annoyance. Why do I love it so much? She whimpered in the safety of her thoughts. There was really no other way to describe it other than warm, his voice that is. The tone was just so carefree, like every thing was going to be okay, and even if it wasn't, he'd somehow make it better. It was infuriating but so intoxicating at the same time. Maybe, she said flatly, not giving him much in the way of reply. But to her surprise this only caused him to light up their silent apartment with a summery chuckle. Again it managed to sound so doting and enticing to her. Please tell me it sounds like this to everyone else. The redhead's inner voice muttered as she clung to him, lost in her own deep emotions as he pushed open the door to their bathroom. Time seemed so much slower as Tayuya allowed herself to be dead weight on his back. Contemplating many things about feeling. The sound of flowing water hitting the bath only made her feel more comfortable, and though she struggled with herself, she realized something. I feel safe, here. Like this. The thought hit her before she could prevent it. That annoying tug at her cherry lips caused them to turn upwards into the smallest but genuine smile. This battle for control was harder than wrestling Shikamaru's shadow that had attempted to strangle her to death. No matter what she did it wouldn't shift, and soon Tayuya found herself gazing down at her caretaker's back. It was serene. It was soft. It was gentle. It was everything Tayuya thought she despised. So why was she so at peace in this infinite moment? A moment that just seemed to drag, and for once she wasn't complaining. The noise of Naruto stirring the bath water with his arm and the sudden need to hang on to him as he leant over snapped the redhead out of her blissful musings. He same humble smile on her face as she now studied his sunny locks. He stood proudly, hands coming to his sides as he admired the depth of the bath. All right, seems ready to me. Naruto had declared. In that same soft but overly enthusiastic voice, she could tell he was smiling while looking down at the bath and couldn't decide whether to be irritated by his dorkish traits or be enamored with them. You're not asleep, are you? He whispered out of the blue, his brows furrowed in concern as his roommate had went silent on him, her peaceful breathing against his skin seeming like she might have passed out. No, I'm awake. The redhead couldn't help but snap, her smile all but disappearing as a new flustered expression forced its way across her features. Of course this only confused her more. Something so simple shouldn't have caused her to react like that. The fact was though, it wasn't what Naruto had said that made her embarrassed, it was the thoughts that came along with his words. The idea of lazily sleeping on his back, tucked soundly into the nape of his neck as he did that thing, that stupid thing he does. Look back at her with that comforting grin as if he was filled with joy and love every time he managed to lay his eyes on her, every time he realized that she was here, with him. It was all building up into Yuya's mind, the exaggerated thoughts of how he appreciated their togetherness flooded her with emotion. It was too much like a volcano inside her stomach. She wanted to squeal with glee, to grip him in a bone-crushing hug until she was sure that her affection had been sated. She needed an output. I wouldn't mind. I get sleepy when it's hot like today too. The blonde comforted, his expression lazy, and to Tayuya's horror he did exactly what he had done in her imagination, turned giving that award-winning goofy grin that just screamed, I'm glad you're here. That coupled with the new imagery of them napping together, sleepy Naruto in the summer sun made her think of a word she'd not thought of in a long time. Why is it so fucking cute? Her inner self shrieked as if enduring torture. She couldn't help but realize she was taking her sweet time on replying to him and swiftly raised her head. She opened her mouth to suddenly speak, but their eyes met one another. She became mute, her mouth slowly closing as she admired the view, letting out nothing more than a muffled as her brain proceeded to shut down. That stupid grin only got bigger, but thankfully the blonde wasn't any more capable of speaking than she was. It was ridiculous. Like something needed to happen, but it just wasn't. Instead the two merely locked eyes for seconds. Those seconds just happened to feel longer than her entire life so far. Tayuya noted that this was usually when he would help undress her, and a deep, burning heat rose from her neck and didn't stop until it met her forehead. The redhead was sure her face could probably melt steel beams right now. The new idea of being exposed to him, allowing him expose her, It made her skin crawl with this weird longing sensation. "What?" he asked simply with that caring tone, his eyes slightly wide in curiosity at her staring. "What?" she instantly fired back without thinking, her tone surprisingly matching his own in a gentle but curious reply, the two of them taking yet another G.A.P. to study one another for simple moments, just precious seconds, but the similar time warp happened once again. Currently it felt like there was nothing else in the world but them. He moved slightly, shifting in place. Standing perfectly still was not exactly the blonde's strong suit after all. The small motion elicited another soft hiss as his hands shifted along her tender legs, the sensation as soft, and though it made her jolt with pain, the feeling of his hands on her was somehow shocking to her, as if she had felt it all this time but hadn't really felt it. It had been so casual until now. Until she had been in a trance-like state like this. "Sorry, let's get you in already, it must be painful." He apologized, his head dipped slightly lower as if a little ashamed of his thoughtlessness. Tayuya couldn't help but glance up at him with what she hoped to be a reassuring smirk. "I've had worse," she said proudly, her tomboyish nature kicking in. She wasn't exactly a stranger to pie. And she was content with the fact that she wasn't a girly girl. "Boyish," echoed in her mind, Temari's voice causing her to scowl, her cute little nose scrunching up in irritation. "Not now." Her inner self yelled at her insecurities. She wanted to experience more of this serenity. She quickly realized she was pressed up against the bath, gazing up at Naruto while being dressed in a towel. Her chocolate eyes wandered down her body. A shiver flowing through her as the feeling of being exposed traveled to her mind, of being vulnerable. She gulped, a fantasy-like image springing to her mind all of a sudden. She imagined laying there on the bathroom floor, the thick steam of the humid room making her naked form glisten with moisture, only her hair concealing patches of her snowy pale skin. Her arms were wrapped lovingly around Naruto's broad shoulders, her left hand roaming through his slightly wet, golden hair. Tayuya's right hand found itself being supportive to his jaw and allowing her fingertips to drown in the sensation of his warm cheek. Her head was tilted to the left, laying back against the bath as her caretaker tended to her neck's exposed right side with generous, delicate kisses. Tayuya snapped forward, eyes wide with shock as reality came back to her. She hunted for her blonde roommate, realizing that he was attentively removing her shoes made her sigh in relief. Arma must have been watching out for her today as she settled back against the cool white tub. Where the hell did that come from? She asked herself, not irritated, just curious. The teen had never experienced anything like that before. It was so vivid that it was difficult to even tell it wasn't really happening. Naruto had carefully pulled away her shoes and socks, a jitter running up his spine. As he revealed more of her porcelain skin, it was different today. Everything felt slow. As if he was only just awakened to the fact that he was undressing a young woman that he considered to be Poe's Sibley, the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen. Still, he bit back his nervousness. He had to do this for her. He didn't want the redhead to think he was being creepy. Doing his best to act casual, he continued undressing her under the towel and watched with slight awe as Tayuya gracefully lifted her arms above her head. He was sure she always moved like that. Somehow it was just so enticing. The blonde's head was spinning, his eyes catching glimpses of her body, her exposed shoulders that her hair fell across in ways that art would be jealous of, the contrasting red against her pale skin just so. The blonde bit his lip and willed his eyes off her, tending to pulling down her shorts through the towel, the act causing his cheeks to dust a light pink as his palms felt the outline of her body. Her body that he was just so painfully aware of. He looked up at her again, as if making sure that this was okay for him to be doing. He was mesmerized. That face. He felt dizzy. Her half-lidded, chocolate eyes were turned away from him, a blush across her embarrassed but willing face, her lips slightly parted just enough to make them more appealing. The moisture of the steamy room making her soft skin seem even more alluring. The water vapor causing her red mane to appear even softer than he knew it to be. Holy fuck, was the only thing that registered in his shattered mind. He felt as if he was barely capable of functioning right now. Naruto gazed at that face for much too long, his mouth slightly agape in appreciation. As if feeling his attention on her, Tayuya's luscious hazel eyes snapped upwards, staring right back at him, causing the blonde to blink and quickly shut his mouth. The blonde couldn't help but feel like an idiot as he forced himself to look down at the towel wrapped around her tempting frame. As he did, he caught just a glimpse of those lips of hers from his peripheral vision. If he didn't know Tayuya like he did, he would have sworn that she had been pouting to look more appetizing. Even while gazing down at the towel and removing her shirt, that expression was burned into his embarrassed mind. He pressed his hand closer to the sides of her body while removing the shirt, attempting to stop the slight shake of nervousness that his hand had now developed. As her shirt traveled upwards, so did his sapphire orbs, drinking in the way that she moved as he pulled the shirt over her head. As soon as he was finished, he span around on foot, knowing what part came next. He raised his hands to his face and allowed himself to turn a deep pink of embarrassment while his back was to her. He slowly pulled his hands down his face, dragging at his features in an attempt to pull himself together. The sounds of underwear hitting the bathroom floor was at least 500 times louder than it had ever been. For the first time he even stole a glance at them, his eyes darting away again as if ashamed of his moment of lust. Still, the glance was all he needed. He could still picture them even while looking away, the overly modest white bra and matching white underwear decorated with a dainty little red bow that complemented their simplicity. It wasn't something he ever imagined she would wear. Or even like, for that matter. That's probably what caused him to gulp, once again realizing that Tayuya was more womanly than he'd given her credit for. "Ow. All right, I'm ready now," she muttered in a way that made him squeeze his eyes shut. That made him let out a breath he didn't know he was holding in. He'd never been nervous like this before. "You can do this," he told himself sternly, hoping to get a grip before turning to Tayuya. It didn't work, of course, but he managed to at least turn to face her again. That stunning red hair stealing his vision once again. "Come on, it's cold down here," she said with a half frown. Her features were dressed with an expectant glare, but for some reason it held no malice. It was more that she couldn't wait any longer to experience his touch again. A childish glare of impatience. "Right," he stuttered with a dazed look. Somehow the blonde managed to act as if nothing had happened. Moving closer to her naked form that he was oh so painfully aware of, she lifted her arms up eagerly, wanting to be held in his arms again. A sudden realization dawned on her a moment too late as her arms traveled upward. The towel was slipping. Tayuya felt her cheeks burn painfully, a feeling of dread coming over her as she reached towards her caretaker. The blonde, who was hyper-aware of her body right now, saw the subtle emotions of the towel in what felt like slow motion. He instantly turned his head away, slamming his eyes shut tightly. He knew what came next. She looked down at herself slowly, body shaking in despair as she studied her fully exposed form. She wanted to scream. For the first time in forever, Tayuya actually wanted to scream until her lungs gave out. The redhead couldn't manage it. A silent, shaky breath was all that escaped her. She was too broken by the sudden predicament, and that vulnerability turned to rage. "Why, you fucking pervert," she yelled as loud as her vocal cords would allow, the silent bathroom being drowned in sound for just a moment. She clutched the towel to herself defensively, covering up and seeking shelter in its soft embrace. The silence that followed was unbearable. No, I didn't see anything. Promise," the blonde begged, his arms waving at her defensively as his head was still locked firmly in the position, looking away from her, eyes shut tightly, resisting the urge to look down at her. Tayuya trailed off, completely emotionally fried right now, her glare softening as she glanced down at her now covered body, hugging the towel closer to herself for support. She could trust him. She knew that she could trust Naruto no matter what. He wouldn't take advantage of something like this. You promise," she stuttered out meekly, her voice small and mouse-like as she calmed herself, staring down at the brown fuzzy towel with a concerned expression. A small part of her wondered if he had seen. To her surprise, what really shocked her was, an even bigger part of her wondered if he had liked what he might have seen. "Yes, I promise. I definitely didn't see anything," he quickly clarified. Naruto didn't want to ruin this moment, this intimacy that they seemed to be having. Especially when he hadn't done anything wrong. He heard her anxiously shuffle in place on the wet, white-tiled bathroom floor. Silence met them. It felt like forever. A droplet of water from the bath's faucet collided with the ready bath below, the noise disturbing the complete quiet of the room for just a moment, reverberating around the bathroom's acoustics. Would you? She trailed off again, looking to right, away from the blonde. She wasn't making sense, but Naruto gave her time, knowing that whatever she was about to say was probably taking everything she had just to even think it. You know, she growled out, frustrated with herself and the lack of control she had on the situation. Her hands were balled into fists by her sides. Tayuya had Eve. N slammed her eyes shut as if to block out the embarrassment she was feeling right now. Would you look at me like that? She blurted out softly, the sound barely above a whisper. The redhead took a deep anxious breath in as she finished, her slender frame trembling with effort. You know, like I was a woman. She snapped, her gaze immediately locking onto her knees, and she knew she wouldn't be able to face him for his reply. It was all too much. The poor redhead felt as if smoke was coming from the top of her head, like she had fried the thing that made her having feelings. It was all too much. Naruto mumbled. Stopping himself from blurting out what was on his mind without thinking about it, he had to make sure he said what he really felt. His voice was soft, serene and delicate. As he knew he had to be the one to restore some semblance of calm into the room. Tayuya's curious chocolate eyes snapped up, surprising even her as they focused on his lips awaiting his words. The redhead's mouth was open slightly in anticipation, and the towel was once again hugged tightly to her form, acting like a safety blanket. No, I wouldn't, he finalized, his tone firm and confident all of a sudden. To the redhead his words were sharper than any kunai, striking her stomach in various manners and causing her heart to sink in possibly the worst thing she'd ever felt. She looked down at her trembling hands and felt a bite at the corner of her eyes. It was horrible. She wanted to cry. Was she no good after all? A pained frown formed on her face, her nose scrunching up as her defenses were about to kick into overdrive. About to yell that she didn't need him or anyone else anyway, there was nothing. Even her aggressive, crude side had been silenced. Tayuya had never felt so hollow, so empty in all of her life. The blonde's face ignited with the darkest of blushes, cheeks washed as crimson as his roommate's hair as he steadied his trembling hands by stuffing them into his pockets. He had to say this. To me. Naruto let out a deep breath, his face tranquil as Tayuya looked up at him, her eyes shimmering with hope, with desperation that there would be more, something. Anything that would make this horrible feeling go away. To me, you will always be Tayuya. I think I like that a lot more. Naruto finished. As he did, the blonde let out a cheeky chuckle and the largest embarrassed grin that he had within his arsenal of goofy, charming expressions. Tayuya flushed with the heat of the sun, looking down at herself and producing a weak, shaky as. He once again looked down at her body with trembling hazel eyes. She could feel the heat throughout her whole body, enveloping her like a comforting embrace. Her heart soared and her stomach was filled with butterflies. She'd never felt so alive. This roller coaster of feelings was leaving her a broken, embarrassed mess as she lay naked on the bathroom floor. Oh, she managed. Her face completely still as her vision darted over the back wall of the bathroom, away from the blonde as she tried to compose herself even slightly. Ironically, she'd never felt like such a woman in all her life. The blonde, eyes still locked closed, gave her the sweet time she needed, patiently awaiting her response as his heart thumped in his chest, racing and causing a feeling of anxiousness to float through him. So then, she trailed off, her hands coming together, awkwardly rubbing over one another in a manner that somehow inspired courage in the flustered redhead. So then, you don't think I'm. She couldn't bring herself to say it. To address her insecurities. No wait. She could. She totally could do this. She clenched her hands together, frowning deeper than she ever had before. Tayuya needed this. The redhead felt sick with contorting, twisting emotions, her eyes squeezed shut again, and she knew it was now or never. You don't think I'm boyish? She asked quickly. It was a good job Naruto was paying such close attention to her, or he would have missed that due to the speed she had said it. A puzzled expression came over his features, his head reeling back slightly, and a confused look came about his face. Boyish, he repeated in his moment of disbelief. Tayuya once again was studying him for answers. Why would I think that? He asked genuinely. Naruto hadn't understood Temari's comment earlier and didn't understand this either. Why was that even something she was concerned about? I don't know anything about that, he admitted honestly, catching her off guard. Tayuya's mouth fell open in attention. Eyes wide in wonderment, this hadn't been the reply she had been expecting. Well, I wouldn't change anything about you, I mean, he said while rubbing his left arm with his right hand. Clearly embarrassed to be speaking his mind so bluntly. She could only duck a little deeper into her towel after that, attempt to make herself seem smaller as her insides melted into a glowy ing warmth that made her let out an almost silent, high-pitched, mhh, of defeated embarrassment. "'Cause then you wouldn't be Tayuya, and that's what makes you so special," he finished, proud of himself for being so honest even if he felt like his body had been lit on fire, his stomach whirling and his heart threatening to thump out of his chest. The adorable sounds that came from her were more than satisfactory payment for his struggles. Still, there was a limit to what these awkward, clumsy, emotionally stunted teenagers could manage. He gulped deeply, going to her side with his eyes still locked closed. She squeaked in surprise as he picked her up gently, carefully. In moments she was lowered into the bath of soothing, blissful heavenly water. Naruto turned to leave her, giving her privacy he knew they both needed when he felt something grip his shirt tightly, so tightly that if he moved then his shirt would have instantly been torn open. He stopped, stock still, wondering what this was about. Tayuya softened her grip, staring at her hand on his chest from her bath. She didn't know what she was doing, she certainly wasn't thinking about it, it was just natural, so she let it happen. Her grip relaxed. Her delicate porcelain hand glided towards his tanned, rugged right. With a trembling, shaky motion she stole it, squeezing it tightly and smothering it in her own. A tiny, genuine smile came across the foxy male. He gave her slender hand a reassuring squeeze back before feeling it fall away from him, missing its warmth. The motion had surprised him so much that he had lost his composure. His eyes open and staring towards the door in front of him. They said nothing as he exited the room, gently closing the door behind him. As the wood met the frame of the door he heard her slip into comfort. The water sounds echoing around their apartment as she claimed her bath, a sigh of relief escaping her that only made him smile harder. He was beat. The blonde stumbled over to the couch. Slumping down on his back casually and looking up at his ceiling, his cheeks puffing with air as he let out a heavy breath. He had a lot to think about. The sound of water rippling broke the silence she lay in. Her hazel eyes snapped open in reaction to the shiver that sent tingles through the nerves of her back. Tayuya had been so deep in thought that she'd momentarily forgotten where she currently was. Sprawled out in the oh-so-comforting heat of her usual nightly bath, right before they ate dinner together. It was a feeling she was thankful for. Having time to allow her length, high red mane to spill out into the water behind her, eyes closed in thought, processing all the difficult emotions of the day had been a sanctuary for Tayuya. She lazily drifted her head from left to right, settling with closing her eyes again, feeling the sensation of the fibers of her hair parting with the flow of the water during her movement, only to allow the beautiful red strands to collect again each time she stopped. It felt almost as if the water was combing away her stress. He thinks I'm special, Tayuya recollected, not fighting against the inflating of her lungs that raised her party. Ally out of the water as a sigh gathered, then filled the air with sickly sweet satisfaction. He thinks I'm special. Her inner voice repeated and her smile only grew. For the first time in her life Tayuya let out a rather hushed chuckle. So genuine and sincere was it that would surely turn the hearts of any who had been lucky enough to hear it. Of course, I'm special. I should have never have even been worryin' about what that damn sand rat thinks anyway. Tayuya reflexively folded her arms over herself in her reassured confidence, her small smile stretching into a cocky smirk. Like I was worried about something like that. She tried to convince herself but her smirk faded with the silence of the bathroom, the faucet dripping into her bath nagging at her sense of self. Still, I dunno why he did. Ain't he say something when that goddamn pineapple head said we were perfect for each other. She gulped. Tayuya could feel herself entering volatile territory and after what had taken place just minutes ago in this very bathroom. She had to temper herself to relax. She had experienced enough emotions for one day. It's not like I care or anything, not really. Especially after what he just said, that would be asking too much, wouldn't it? Whatever, this is stupid. Her mind settled, the sounds of her hair stirring the water sent her back to her relaxation, the soothing scent of strawberry filling her proximity. It was from the shampoo that Naruto had picked out just for her. Tayuya smiled at his thoughtfulness, then, her brow furrowed, her smile dropped into a frustrated grunt. I mean, he just didn't say anything at all. That's even worse than saying something bad, right? She asked herself as if she would receive an answer of support. Her ear twitched, and her eyes opened with her brows nestled together in effort. She raised her head slightly out of the water. She wasn't sure. Tayuya squinted at the bathroom door and moved her head a further few inches as if it would help her to hear in any way. She wasn't mistaken. He was humming. Tayuya's expression of effort transitioned into a spell of surprise, taking in the gentle melody. She could imagine him busying himself as he did it, even T. He melody was carefree and somehow reminded her of summer. Tayuya was surprised that he even held the tune rather well. She shook it off, huffing in amusement as she sunk back into her place of respite. She was met with a new train of thought. Tayuya looked down at her legs, and in a very sudden twist she wondered, what would happen if they did heal? Would all of this go away? She questioned, now very aware of the possibility. The more she investigated the concept, Tayuya realized that she liked living with Naruto, and a very different idea entered her head as she looked down at her legs. For a moment, Tayuya was unable to silence herself before the thoughts made themselves present. For just the briefest of moments, Tayuya had completely abandoned the use of her legs if it meant that she could stay like this. It was instinct and instinct alone, but the meaning behind it was a powerful one. I don't want to lose this. Tayuya's face seemed to fold inward, scrunching up with a sting biting at her eyes. She aggressively slashed at the water with her arm, splashing across the surface. Stupid fucking steam, she hissed in a whisper, defending herself with a reason that her eyes had glazed over. With the burning desire to release tears. Still, vibrant images of being in an apartment by herself with functioning legs seemed wrong. Any picture her mind created of her living in Konoha just didn't sit right unless Naruto was there. Even ideas of Naruto living alone made her feel a sense of longing, a need to give him company even if she had to force his usual smile on his stupid face. The idea of Naruto not living alone unfortunately ventured down a different avenue. It was not one that Tayuya enjoyed. Her fists balled together and something twisted inside of her stomach, but yet she felt inclined to explore her feelings. To try to understand them even though it felt so horribly tortuous. She witnessed Naruto, cooking and busying himself as he would when cooking meals for her, except this time. Sakura lazily snaked her arms over his shoulders, a perfect smile on her face. The daydream continued. Sakura leaned over Naruto, eagerly rising on her tiptoes to kiss at his cheek before re-nuzzling her nose against his likely warm cheek, a loving giggle escaping her. A gulp rolled down Tayuya's throat. She saw Naruto turn to Sakura and give her that grin, the one that said, "I'm so happy you're here with me. I'm ready to get out." Tayuya yelled, bolting to an upright position with her arms squeezed tight to her body, her knuckles white from the squeezing tension in her fists. Her eyes opened and she looked down at herself, her mouth falling open in surprise. Oh, she mumbled in a tiny voice that didn't sound like her own. She backed up against the bath and quickly pulled out the plug. Realizing too late that she was not so ready to get out after all. Tayuya grimaced as she heard the humming stop, and footsteps quickly made their way to the bathroom door, the only thin that was shielding her naked form from sight. Wait a sec, you idiot. I didn't think it would take so long for the water to drain. I didn't think you would be this excited to see me again. It's only been like 10 minutes. She surprised herself at her remark and heard his hand leave the handle of the door. Stupid, I'm always excited to see you. 10 minutes. More like an hour. She heard him mutter, grumbling to himself. If there had been any sound at all in the bathroom other than the slowly draining water, she would have never have caught it if she hadn't been paying an absurd amount of attention to the entryway to seeing her body in the nude. Her cheeks promptly matched her hair in shade of red. She was willing to completely forget that he'd called her stupid due to the flutter she felt at the sincerity of his remark. "What did you say, asshole? Oi, I can hear you sayin' some shit out there." She yelled to cover the sounds of her fumbling to get dressed in her underwear and towel. And if she were to be embarrassed, then he was to suffer too. Nothing. I said take your time. He hastily defended from behind the door, leaving her shaking her head in amusement. He could be so predictable at times, then bafflingly blindside her the next. It always managed to keep her looking forward to his reactions. As she smothered herself in a soft cream towel that had been left for her. Tayuya was met again with her recent thoughts, what they meant to her and her conclusion. Tayuya didn't want to be separated from him. She didn't want him to live alone either, and she definitely didn't want anyone else to replace her. Sakura or otherwise. Alright, I'm getting cold. Get me out already. She huffed, though it lacked her usual punchy confidence, sounding more like resignation. Naruto eyed the door handle. He had been leaning his shoulder against the wooden door after being caught out. He hadn't expected her to hear him, and the chance of her hearing what he'd actually said left him dazed with embarrassment. He faltered for a moment. How would he face her after what happened? Would things be the same as they always were? Why shouldn't they be? This is hard. Was the only though. Naruto managed as he scratched the back of his head, the heat from his cheeks thankfully subsiding as he considered how he would act around her. He didn't want to play off their bathroom tension as nothing, but he also didn't want to press the matter into an issue that it shouldn't be. It was Tayuya. Wouldn't it be best if he was just natural with her, as he always got to be? Alright, I'm getting cold. Get me out already. He heard her order in a tone that didn't quite sit right with him. Is she upset? Was there something I've missed? Naruto flicked through the recent events in his mind until he was met with the barely concealed image of Tayuya in his mind, neck exposed with her rosy lips partially parted, her eyes distant and turned away from him. Maybe I'll just see how it goes. I'm sure everything will be fine. What am I even worried about? Okay, here I go. Naruto hyped himself up to enter the room, yet his hand was glued to the door handle as if set in concrete. He glared down at his hand, willing it to move, but it resisted his urges. He breathed in, composed himself, then pushed it open. He had pushed himself into the bathroom much too quickly and now was facing the consequences. His eyes studied her wet form draped in one of his cream towels, her wet red hair still cascading water droplets down her arms as she hugged the towel to herself. Naruto felt himself being too attentive, yet noticed her eyes seemed to linger on him just as long. He smiled, she smiled, then they fell into silence. Tayuya managed a nod, an instruction for him to go ahead without having to trust her voice not to betray her. She felt his hands on her as Naruto scooped her out of the bath and into his arms. Of course, Tayuya latched onto him, wrapping her arms neatly around his neck as she always did, and allowed herself to rest against his frame. Then, there was nothing. Nothing had changed between them. It was as comforting and warm as it always was. There was no scary change or dramatic difference of sensation. Just the regular feeling of complete comfort and safety. If she had to put it into words, Tayuya could only say it felt right. Tayuya realized she was not as against Shikamaru's remark as she had previously thought. So what? Maybe I want to be perfect for someone. That's okay, right? Everyone wants that. And I'm not even saying that it has to be for asshole. He just takes really good care of me and stuff. He even treats me really nice too. No one has ever called me special before. Tayuya admitted it, allowing herself some leeway with her honesty due to how difficult the feelings were to actually combat. They made it through the bathroom door and she was greeted with his fragrant cooking as was normal, as was her schedule. This was her life now. She didn't want this to change. Oi, asshole, she muttered, gripping the collar of his black t-shirt in a way that requested he look down at her even if her face was well hidden in the comforts of his chest. Awa. Why from the dangers of actually looking back up at him? He inquired curiously, stopping just above the tired, but faithful brown couch that she so often claimed. The lightness of his voice had surprised even him, but Naruto thought nothing of it in his comfort. His reply only seemed to wreck Tayuya, the grip on his shirt strengthening in a way that left the material bunching under the force of her hold. Why didn't you help me? You know, with that pineapple-headed idiot. With Shikamaru. She heard him pause. Why would you need help with Shikamaru? He answered. It may have just been her imagination. Or her overly focused mind, but she was almost certain she felt Naruto hold her tighter, bringing her closer to his body, welcoming her with the earthy scent of summer as he drew her against him. Tayuya let the lump in her throat subside. He was probably just concerned about dropping her. He was stood in place, with her held like this. It only made sense. What she couldn't explain was he feeling that Naruto was frowning down at her. Well, what he said. Tayuya finished her sentence and felt his body relax. It was embarrassing, right? He said we were. She felt herself trailing off. He said we were perfect for each other. Naruto felt her grip on his shirt threatened to tear it from his chest. He was left wide-eyed, bewildered at the question as he held her over the couch in his arms. He could feel that this wasn't an answer he should rush. Slowly, he lowered her down onto the comfortable couch, taking in the opportunity to be able to see her face again as he did. Naruto stayed close to Tayuya, her hand dropping his shirt to pull him down to her level, arms resting over his shoulders to trail off down his back. She didn't quite manage to wrap them around him in what could be considered an embrace. Yet she held him nonetheless. He let out a nervous chuckle. I guess I didn't know what to say, I thought I'd end up saying something stupid that would make you angry. His honest answer was followed by another laugh bundled with anxiousness, his hand stroking the back of his neck as he so often did. TCH. Why would I get angry? She snapped, her frown disappeared as quickly as it had appeared and was replaced with a sincere surprise, oh. She paused. There's no way I'd get angry with you that easy, asshole. She attempted, but to her misfortune, the reply street. Ill seemed poisoned with irritation, causing her to let out a low growl of annoyance. It's okay, right? I think he was just joking around and stuff. Naruto offered, slumping down on the couch free of her arms instead of leaning over her while awkwardly still half stood up. I wanna know. Tayuya stated, she was surprised at how bold she had managed to sound. What you would have said, I mean, if it would have made me angry, then I wanna hear it. She managed to voice her thoughts and a burning determination was evident in her hazel eyes. Naruto sighed, he knew there was no getting around the subject as his eyes met hers. He looked forwards, away from her, trying to gather himself. He needed to come up with something, he didn't want this to end up as an argument. He repressed the urge to groan at his feeling of helplessness. Tayuya pulled his shirt again, forcing him close to her. She saw Naruto stop himself using his hands on the armrest behind Tayuya's back, they were resting just above her shoulders. His chest just inches away from hers. Their eyes searched each other. She began to lose hope. You would have denied it, wouldn't you? No. Tayuya, that's not it. It's fine, I get it. Her grip on his shirt loosened. But she couldn't bring herself to let go, she didn't want to let him go. Tayuya cut him off, her hands releasing him, she didn't like this. She didn't want to talk about this anymore. It took everything she had not to yell and curse and jump to early conclusions that would make her say something she'd regret. Forget about it, she turned her head away. Let's just eat or something, she tried. Tayuya's eyes quickly snapped back up to him when she heard his groan of frustration, she could see bottled up emotion on his features. I couldn't answer 'cause I didn't know what to say. She could see his nervous eyes hunting through her own, likely looking for any signs that she believed him. He moved closer. All of this is so confusing to me. Her eyes widened at his honesty, that she had not expected. I've always been alone. I've never had somebody by my side like this. Sure, I've had friends and stuff, but I always wonder if we're really friends, you know. Whenever I've really needed someone, well, that doesn't matter. It's like what I told you before with Sasuke. He may have been a bastard, but Tayuya watched his nose crinkle, a hurt line. His face that she didn't ever wish to see again for as long as she lived. Within his blue eyes shook betrayal, a deep bottomless ocean of shimmering discomfort. She let him open up to her, his fists clenched white with effort. He was always there for me, in our stupid kind of way. When things got hard, we would just fight over everything 'cause we're no good at this stuff. His features softened. It was a look that made Tayuya feel much too weak. He was looking at her as if she was the only thing in the world. But you're always really kind to me, Tayuya. You don't just treat me like I'm just some useless idiot. You help me however you can and take your time to train me, and I've never really had that before, not like you do. You even make me smile. And Tayuya searched him, she wanted to hear the rest. She knew he'd cut himself off, likely from fear of rambling, but she didn't care, whatever it was she wanted to hear it. She didn't think, her hands moved upwards, stroking through his hair and gently pulled him closer still by the back of his head, hoping to encourage him. With you here, I'm not alone anymore, and that's so scary. He grinned at her weakly, because it could go away again at any time. Tayuya had enough of listening, she didn't want him to entertain that idea. For the first time she pulled him into her neck, resting her chin atop his soft, blonde locks as if to stop him from saying another word. No one has ever gave a shit about me, I've been alone since I can remember and stuff too. It is scary. She felt herself gulp, agreeing to the sentiment. I don't really understand about you and Sasuke, I guess it seems nice, in a really stupid, totally stupid kind of way. She huffed, frustrated as she began to lose out to her embarrassment, but she felt Naruto shift under her. A surprised smile lit up his face. Tayuya may not have realized it, but that was the first time she had actually called Sasuke by his actual name. But well, Tayuya let out a groan of frustration. I don't know. I'm happy here, I know I shouldn't be, but I am. She seemed to shrink inwards, her voice losing its volume. Of course it's scary. She mumbled just above a squeak. Why shouldn't you be happy? Because I was captured in shit. What kind of ninja likes the place they're trapped in? She felt him tense. As soon as the words had left her mouth she wanted to take them back. He freed himself from the comforts of her chin, looking down at her again with that unbearably hurt expression. It took everything she had not to look away. Trapped in. His voice was soft, but distant. It was the voice of someone who was expecting the worst. So then, if you could, his eyes lingered on hers, you would leave. No. She recoiled, looking up at him as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. You wouldn't. No. If that is what you wanted, then I want to stay with you. Tayuya suddenly yelled, eyes slammed close, ignoring any further discussion on the matter. It had been completely on instinct alone, otherwise she would never have managed to say something so forward. Her pale cheeks hinted a rosy pink as realization hit her. She gazed up at him, waiting for a response with a quickened heartbeat, with a lump in her throat the size of a golf ball. Naruto didn't answer her. Tayuya's hazel eyes widened to new heights. His body was against hers. A rough, yet so fort surface clumsily crashed against her lips. She felt warm. Her lips felt warm. Tayuya felt herself slump into the back of the couch, fingers returning to his blonde locks, welcoming his kiss. It was brief and clueless, with the two of them being completely unaware of how to even share something so intimate. They had done nothing more than manage to press their lips together. Tayuya felt him pull away, as if to study her reaction to what he had thought was a good idea at the time, his eyes intensely tracing her face. Do that again, she mumbled against him, even though she had already half-pressed her lips against his. They relaxed into one another, with both of them pressing against each other for just a second. She pulled away, letting the sensation linger on her lips. She could still feel his warmth. Her lips even had a slight taste that could only be described as him. Tayuya caught him leaning in again, her back against the armrest. She retreated backward, momentarily embarrassed by the new feelings. Oi, she looked up at him with soft, shimmering eyes, and her voice lacked its usual flair. Don't be just helping yourself all of a sudden. She mumbled quietly. She sounded far too feminine for her own expectations and couldn't help but let her eyes dance away from him. She heard his soft huff of amusement, but he didn't pursue her. Instead she felt his arms snake around her waist and the warmth of his cheek land upon her shoulder, letting her look away and compose herself. Mostly, Tayuya was thankful that he'd rolled onto his side to lay against her and avoid placing any weight on her sensitive legs, but even as a battle-hardened kunoichi, nothing had ever made her heart race quite so quickly. Close your eyes, she ordered. Wah. Close them. She was happy to watch him do as instructed. And when she was sure that he wasn't going to peek up at her, she wrapped an arm around him in return. It curled around his shoulders, and her delicate index finger made way to his cheek. Slowly, with all the relaxed concentration she could muster, she gently traced the whisker marks along his tanned cheeks with a shaky, slender finger. Tayuya moved from top to bottom, individually showing as much care to each as she let her finger travel the lines on his features. It gave her nothing but satisfaction to feel him relax completely into her, to be completely open and vulnerable to her. To trust her so completely. Is that good? She couldn't help it. She'd never done anything of the sort before, she had to know. A lazy, utterly comfortable sound droned from Naruto. If you don't stop, I'm definitely going to fall asleep, he muttered, a small yawn escaping him as if to back up his words. A warm, throaty chuckle left Tayuya. It was vibrant and caring. It was so unlike her that her head jerked back in surprise to the sound. I guess I've finally found a way to shut you up, asshole. I will have to make noise more often. Idiot. She couldn't help it. Yuya was smiling like a loser and she knew it. She just couldn't bring herself to care as she looked down on him resting against her with a lazy smile. It was her who was making him smile like that. Footsteps. Tayuya felt like screaming. She felt like cursing at anyone and anything. She had completely forgotten their deal. She had told Tsunade that Naruto would spend time with her in exchange for scrolls. Thanks karma. She growled inwardly. Get up, I think Tsunade is here. She whispered to his ear, well aware that someone of Tsunade's prowess had hearing beyond normal measure. She smirked as he bolted to his feet, dusting himself down as he headed into the kitchen to busy himself with his cooking while inhaling a glass of water in what Tayuya presumed was an attempt to cool down his glowing cheeks. Tayuya heard a slam, along with a grumble from downstairs. The footsteps had been Naruto's neighbor from the apartment below. They looked at each other, sharing a glance of amusement, Ling in their embarrassment until they broke out into carefree chuckles. You know, if you wanted dinner, you could have just said. Naruto joked, dishing up their meals. Isn't this how it always is? Bath then food, that's how it is. I guess I've never noticed, it's just something I've gotten used to. Then, since you're so used to it, then I guess I'll just have to endure it, asshole. Well, I'll eat in the bedroom tonight while looking out of the window, instead. That should change things up a bit. Don't worry, you can stay in here on the couch. It taken a second for Tayuya to process what he meant. Hey, she muttered. Face upturned in an adorable expression. To her amusement he let loose a hearty laugh, displaying their dishes on the living room table as he always did, sitting beside her legs with them curved up against his back. Oi, I want to sit up. She watched him glance down at her, likely wondering if he had heard her correctly. His smile softened into a stern frown. No, it's bad for you. We already went outside for quite a long time with me carrying you instead of using your chair today. Exactly, so I should sit up like in a chair, right? She watched him puzzle over her quick-witted reply, taking a moment to calculate a response. That's different, cause the chair is meant for that. If I sit you up here on the couch then you'll hurt your legs. Sorry, but try to get comfortable like that. Don't make me say it, asshole. Tayuya grumbled quietly, watching as he readied the table for them to tuck into the chicken soup he had prepared. Say what? Just let me sit up. If you're worried about eating the soup without spilling it, I can feed you if you need me to. I want to sit next to you. She grumbled, face turned inwards towards the couch so. Tayuya missed the reaction of him dropping his spoon, letting it reverberate on the table in his surprise. She did catch the soft sigh of defeat however. Naruto stood up, lifted her slightly, and adjusted her position to take up less of the couch. To her surprise, he handed her the soup regardless of what she had asked for. Annoyed that he hadn't answered her, she took the bowl with a glare, watching him closely. Naruto taken his own bowl, sat down on the couch, then shuffled backwards. The concentration he used to not spill anything was rather endearing, but she hadn't expected this. He'd laid down next to her. The two of them propped upwards by the armrest of the chair. There, this is okay, right? She slugged him, lightly smacking his arm then resting her head comfortably on his nearest shoulder. Idiot. That's it for today. I will stop here. I hope you all enjoyed this video. If you please consider subscribe and make sure to hit that like button, share with your friends and don't forget to check out my Patreon. Details in description.